What's up, guys? We're going to do what we did yesterday, do some Diamond Dynasty, and then check out some MLB The Show. Check out Road to the Show. Today, they are releasing season awards for Lightning players. It'll be afternoon. So we might back out of this for a little bit and then go back into it. Where's my phone? I hear it. You hear my phone? Oh, somewhere. I need water anyway.
Did you get your coffee?
My phone out of my pocket before we headed out. What did I do with it?
I mean, it sounded pretty close up here. It's the only one.
Is it a fat one? Oh, that's it. Maybe it was your phone that was vibrating up because I don't have any missed calls. Oh, yeah, I do.
No, I don't.
Yes.
No, I don't. Can I get you a badge number, please?
You see it right here, so they need you to leave the building. First Amendment or not First Amendment, they can
So you're telling me to leave the building?
recording.
You're telling me I'm under arrest?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, what's up, guys? Long Island Audit here. Back again with another installment of Throwback Thursday. This audit takes place at the City Hall in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The mayor of Bridgeport, Joseph Ganim, was previously convicted on corruption charges and sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. Ganim being reelected as mayor in the same city he committed his crimes absolutely blows my mind. Stay tuned to the end for updates. Let's get into it. Hi, man. How are you? I was just wondering what time of service.
And welcome into the ballpark. Happy to have you with us. Diamond Dynasty Baseball on tap tonight. It's the Drillers going up against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I just wanted to know. I'll be quick. I just wanted to know what kind of services you offer here to the public.
First pitch coming at you after the break.
No. Because I just that, man. It's nothing
And
nefarious.
here is Ronald Acuna Jr.
Single dad to a wonderful daughter. I was with the light of my life the very moment she was born. It would be an understatement to say things weren't easy after her mother passed. But we made it through the grief
Now
together,
fly
and
ball to right
that
center.
had strengthened our
McCutcheon
family
after
bond.
it. He's got it.
My
And there's
daughter
one down.
has since grown and flown the nest, and we've always had a
Now
great
the
relationship.
number 2 hitter, Ricky
When she was
Henderson.
growing up, I found myself gripped by fear that I'd end up losing her too.
On the ground, right
Sometimes
side.
that terror of loneliness was just
Gathers
background
and
noise,
throws to first.
something I managed to
And
ignore
there's two
by
away.
busying myself.
David
Other
Justice,
times it was
the next to
overwhelming,
hit.
and I'd become so overly cautious and protective of
Swings
her
and
that
misses.
sometimes I feel like I failed her as a father.
Last thing you want to do as a hitter is
She missed out on a few field trips, a handful of her friends' birthday parties, and a whole lot of play dates,
You're going to be trying to
because
catch
I was
things
just
out
too
front,
nervous
so
to leave her
off-speed
alone
pitches
in a
may
place
be
that I
a good
wasn't familiar
complement to
with.
that fastball.
It got to
And
the
a
point
pitch.
where, around the time of her 13th birthday,
There's a
I
swing and a
realized
miss.
that
Man, he
I'd never
really
left her
sells the
home alone
changeup for
before.
that arm action.
Even when it came to short grocery store runs, I'd insist that she'd hit pause on whatever she was doing to join me on whatever errand I was running. That worked when she was younger, but then the older she got, the more she appeared to resent being attached to my hip. The whole thing culminated in a small argument one day, when she was insistent on me leaving her at home so she could finish off some homework while she was still feeling studious. My words, not hers, by the way. I won the argument, and she had her face like thunder during the ride to the grocery store, but I started to wonder if I should be relaxing my policies as she got older. A few months later, after a long period of reflection, I walked into her room and told her that I was making a quick run to Target to pick up a few things. She groaned, slumped off her chair, and moved to put her shoes on. Then, with theatrical timing, I told her that I would be going alone. She smiled, the kind of smile that brings a lot of joy as a parent. It was a smile that marked a milestone in both of our lives. She was growing up, and it was time to start giving her some space. I know it might sound pretty dumb, but I actually got a little emotional while climbing into the driver's seat and edging out of our driveway. The whole kids growing up so fast thing is for sure overused, but it's overused because it's true. By the time I got to Target, I had fought back all the tears, and after repeatedly telling myself, everything is going to be fine, I actually began to feel a semblance of calm.
Baby.
Then, as I'm walking up and down the aisles, picking up odds and ends, I feel my phone start to vibrate in my pocket. I pull it out and see it's my daughter calling me, probably to ask me to pick something up for her. I press the green button, bring the phone to my ear, and before I can even say anything, all I can hear is screaming and crying.
All right. Let's go. Wait. Let's go tell mommy. Hey, Tip. You at? I've had these for a minute, though. I've had them for at least, because we were staying at Pond Drive when you bought him, right? You want to talk about something? She says she don't remember Pond Drive. She does, Ghost. go online to Skechers Hey. Because I'm not gonna take 5 pairs of shoes like last time. I'd like to get another pair of Jordan 2s, ones that are nice, like these. I'm gonna have to look because those Jordan 2s are very fucking comfortable. And I still want to get the Jordan 3s, but we'll burn that for you.
Out of all of them, all the shoes I got, these are the most comfortable tennis shoes. I think they're Air Max.
Yeah, they are. That's what I was looking at.
They're the most comfortable pair.
Ain't that a bitch?
What?
Fucked up my tattoo.
Don't fade.
No, never mind. It had something, had like a little piece on it. I had to scrape it off. But, oh no, there's not fading. Whenever it gets canned, it lights up.
So did you
What do you think? No.
Did you look what you put on there?
I didn't. I'm hard-headed, Stephanie.
I just left the shopping cart where it was, sprinting out of the store towards my car.
Ryan Reynolds
And
here.
as I was driving back to the apartment, I tried calming her down and getting her to tell me what was happening. She just
In
kept saying,
there for strike
I don't know.
one.
I don't know.
Two
I
out
think
spaces
someone shot a
empty.
gun. My next question was, are you hurt? And when she replied, yes, I just tossed my phone down, got both hands on the wheel, and then started speeding back towards our apartment. Minutes
That
later,
one
it
in
was
the
only
dirt.
2 blocks from my
Count 1 and
apartment
2.
when I saw flashing lights in the rearview mirror. I felt sick as I realized that I was faced with 2 distinct choices. Run from the cops to get to my daughter, and risk getting myself shot or something when I jumped out of my car and run inside.
He's someone that
Or
really beats
pull
up on
over,
right-handed
try my
pitching.
best
The
to explain the
lefties, however,
situation,
give him a little bit
and
more trouble.
temporarily condemn my daughter to her fate.
No trouble.
To some, that might seem
All
like a
set
real
for the start of
conundrum,
the inning. Here's
but
the
to a
center
parent,
fielder, Ken
absolutely
Griffey
zero
Jr.
thought is involved in the
Jones
decision-making.
back to work.
You help your
And
child,
the first pitch
there are no
misses
other
for
options.
ball 1.
I never thought that I'd ever get into an actual police chase in my life.
And a
Aside
swing
from
and
a few
miss.
parking tickets, I've always walked the line and stayed firmly on the right side of the law. So the fact that I was gunning it away from
And
the
that's
cop car and
strike 2.
praying they'd understand my reasoning, it was surreal in the extreme.
Top hand better be working for the
I
hitters.
reached the 2
Adjust that
blocks
side
back
a
of my
little bit.
apartment,
Give yourself a
skidding
chance
into
to
my
hit.
driveway,
And that
and got
one
out of the
finds
car
its
with
way
my
through.
hands in the air as
So
the
a
cops
man
raced
on
in
base
behind
to
me.
start the inning.
Well,
I
that may
remember
end
them
up
jumping
being
down
an
too,
at-bat we go back
taking
to
cover
later
behind
on
open
when this game
doors,
is over.
and
Let's
pointing
get the
guns
ball by
and
the pitcher.
tasers
There's
at
a
me
lot
as
of
I
base
screamed
hits
at
up the
them.
middle,
I'm
even
so
on ground
sorry.
balls.
My
So
daughter's
nice
in
job
trouble.
to
I
use
couldn't
that
stop.
big
I
hole
can't
and
stop.
get himself a hit.
I kept repeating my stories once the cops approached with his gun drawn, and I don't know if it was the tone of my voice or the look in my eyes,
There goes Junior.
but all of a sudden, he
This one
stopped
lifted in the
and
air,
asked me
left
what my keys
field.
are.
Reynolds gets under it.
Recognizing
Drops
that he
into
was
the
giving me the
glove.
benefit of the doubt, I
There's
told
one
him
away.
that my front door keys were attached to my car keys, and
Here's
that they were still in
Brandon
the ignition of my car.
Definitely wants to stay out
He
of
told
the
his
double
partner to
play
keep an
here.
eye
Ball
on
on
me.
the ground in the
Then he grabs
infield.
my keys after shutting
Should
off
be
my
an
engine, then
inning
basically
double play.
runs into my apartment to look for my daughter.
Runner takes
It was a
off.
truly terrifying
Misses.
few minutes for me, because I had no idea what the cops were going to find. I didn't know if it was an intruder still in the apartment, or if all they were going to find was my daughter's body,
Man at
and
second.
waiting for the answer with a gun pointed at me felt like an
As a
eternity.
pitcher, you know the runner on second is
When the
ready
cop
to
emerged
push
moments
things with his
later,
speed.
leading my
They say
daughter
it's
out of the
probably gonna be
apartment,
a big run,
it
so
was
you
probably
really
the
have to
purest,
execute on the
most
mound.
overwhelming sense of relief I've ever
And a
felt.
count 1 and 2.
But when I saw that she had blood all over her, I begged the cops to call an ambulance to get her to the hospital.
That's down and in.
And the one cop who went inside said that he'd wait with her until the EMTs arrived, but the other guy was going to have to arrest me for fleeing a traffic stop. The cop was just doing his job. I know that. There's no way that he could have just let me go for starting a car chase, no matter how small it was, but
That's a strike.
he gave me dignity of just
Here's a big
sitting
power
in
threat.
the backseat of the
Ethan
squad
Salas.
while it was parked across the street. Me getting arrested like that obviously made the situation even more distressing for my daughter, who had no idea why I was being held in the back of that squad car.
On the
But
ground
after
to the
she
left.
calmed down a little, one of the cops checked her injuries and came over to tell me that she'd be okay, and that all her injuries were basically superficial.
Here is
I asked him if it was 100% sure because my daughter had mentioned something about a gunshot when she called me. But the cop was able to assure me that she had no gunshot wounds, just a bunch of glass cuts to her upper arm and lower cheek. Again, I felt this overwhelming sense of relief, and for the second time that day, I found myself fighting back tears. A few minutes later, the EMT showed up. Then, after a quick examination of my daughter's injuries, she was driven to the hospital to get stitches. That was my cue to be taken to jail, but I was out on bail just a few hours later after being given a court summons for fleeing the traffic stop. I immediately drove over to the hospital to pick up my daughter, who by then had a line of stitches among the worst of her wounds, which ran along her jawline. On the way back to our apartment, I got her to tell me exactly what had happened to cause her injuries, as obviously I still didn't understand how a gunshot had caused glass injuries. She said that she was making a sandwich and getting a glass of water, and had just placed the glass of water down in front of her in her little breakfast nook when it suddenly exploded. The explosion of glass was what caused the cuts on her arm and face, and right around the same time, she said that she had heard a loud bang coming from the apartment next door. Now, without boring you with too much detail, the layout of our kitchen is such that there's no way someone could have actually aimed a shot at her. But when I got back home and spoke to the cops who were still there, all became clear. They had already arrested our neighbor in the apartment next door, as the angle of the bullet holes in our kitchen showed exactly where the shot had come from. Apparently, the guy was drunk, or at least some other kind of intoxicated, and had decided to clean his guns without checking if they were actually loaded or not. He admitted to the whole thing, and apparently broke down crying in the car. He seriously hurt someone after hearing all the screaming. He got a reckless endangerment charge, which he was eventually convicted of, but he didn't see any jail time for it. He only has his guns confiscated after receiving a suspended sentence and mandatory substance counseling, and to be biased, but I think that he should have been handed a whole lot more. Me, on the other hand, I pled no contest to the traffic stop thing, but after the judge learned of the circumstances, how they were related to the other guy's reckless endangerment charge, I had to pay $500 mandatory fine instead of having my license suspended for a year on top of it. According to my attorney, it was about as good a deal as I was ever going to get, as obviously it's outside the law. And the cops take fleet traffic stops very, very seriously. In the end, it was clear to both me and my daughter that we had both been much to danger to the storm, and it was something that I was very thankful for.
And he's got it.
But just as I've gotten comfortable giving my daughter some space,
This one ends
the
as a
anxiety of
one-run
losing
ball
her
game.
somehow came back with 100 times stronger, and it wreaked havoc on my mental health. For the first time in my life, I actively sought out therapy on my sister's recommendations. And I have to admit that weekly sessions put a serious dent in my paranoia.
Gotta change my lineup a little bit.
I never turned out to be one of those hands-off, carefree parents. I'm still not, even now that she's moved out and living in some fancy apartment downtown. I'll always be her father. Not a thing in the world is going to change that, but this also means that until the day that I'm in the dirt, I'll always be scared.
Let's bring Harry Ford back.
I'm a 15-year-old female, and I live with my parents and my older brother. He's 18 years old. My parents work till late evenings, and most of the times I'm home alone. Sometimes my brother is home with me. My family used to take care of a mentally disabled person by giving him food, old clothes, and some other things. Sometimes he used to behave strictly like a normal person. He was not that ill that I knew of. I knew him since I was 10. He had no family, and he used to live with the people that he was working for.
Sandwiched between Mazeroski Way and the Roberto Clemente Bridge. Welcome to PNC Park. Diamond Dynasty Baseball coming your way on the show. It's the Drillers going up against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Let's call him George for the sake of the story.
And we'll be back with the first pitch right after this.
I let him know that she wasn't home. He had slightly moved in.
And here is
and
Ronald
as soon as he saw
Acuna
me
Jr.
sleeping there, he stopped and he started whispering and asking me for my phone
Here
number.
comes a pitch.
I was completely shocked.
That one
Why would he
finds
need
the
my
zone,
number?
and we
And
are
if it was for some
underway.
reason, why was he whispering as if he didn't want my brother to hear it? I immediately felt uneasy, and I made him leave by telling him to come on a Sunday to meet my mother for whatever reason he came for. He left. Fast forward 2 to 3 months later, and I was again home alone. My brother was at my uncle's home for my older cousin for change.
I didn't know I was playing.
I had to go see my grandma at the hospital, and my dad would be staying there, and Mom wouldn't be back until 10 p.m.
That's bullshit.
Now I was in the bedroom watching some YouTube videos when I again heard knocking at the front door. It was around 8 p.m. and I told my mom to probably back early, so I went to unlock the door, and when I did, it was him.
George.
He was standing there at the door with an evil grin on his face.
Gets a piece.
He was about to shut the door when he said he needed some water to drink as he was thirsty. As I've known him since I was a child and never really felt any danger with him except the last time. I told him to wait there, and I went to grab a glass of water for him. When I came out of the kitchen, I saw he was already inside the living room standing there, and I was kind of scared and confused. I gave him a glass, and he tried to hold my hand. I was almost paralyzed with fear. He started coming closer to me, and he almost tried to touch me inappropriately when I then slapped him. He then told me that he wanted to have sex with me. He would then immediately leave after that. I was disgusted, and I told him I was going to call the police. After that, he left. And I told my mother when she came back home about everything that happened. To my knowledge, she told my father about it, and I don't know what they did to him afterwards, but I never did see him again. To this day, I still can't believe how my family took him in, and he could behave like that. He truly was a sick that didn't deserve our hospitality.
And there's a foul ball.
My name is Angelo, and I'm 16. Around 3 months ago, my parents left me alone due to the wedding. With my family and dogs, Coco, Marshall, Sky, and Rubble.
Got him. 2 gone
Marshall
after the
and Sky are
strikeout.
pit bulls,
Ryan
so
Reynolds here.
nothing to fear if
Outfield
someone
playing
broke in.
very deep, not wanting anything over their heads.
Left. Then Marshall and Sky outside to do their business. Barking outside, and I went to check on them when I saw a woman who was around 5'5" and in her late 30s standing on the other side of the fence looking at my dogs. You have such beautiful dogs. Can I pet them? The woman said to me. I was about 3 feet away from the fence, but I could smell cigarettes coming out of her clothes. Sorry, they don't really like being pet, but thanks for the compliment. I said to the woman while hurrying my dogs inside. She then gave me this glare, a glare that still haunts me to this day. When my dogs were inside, I made sure the doors were locked, and I checked that the woman was gone. When I didn't see her, I rushed all of my dogs to a room that was the farthest away from the backyard door. I texted that there was a strange woman outside trying to pet our dogs. Now, I forgot to mention, but there's apartments right next to our neighborhood, and we had a fair share of people stopping and looking at our dogs. But something about this woman made me and my dogs feel really unnerved. My mom said that they wouldn't be heading home anytime soon, but to be safe. A few minutes later, I had heard the doorbell, and all of the dogs went crazy. My bedroom is fairly large, but all of the dogs moving around was crazy. I decided not to bother to see who was outside and to just stay with the dogs. Me and the dogs were watching a movie, but I then heard clicks at my window.
Ty France digs in
I was
now.
starting to freak out internally, wondering if it was that same lady trying to break in.
Through there for a strike.
Then I heard a loud crash. Mustered up the courage to look out the window. pulled back the curtains.
And there's a base hit to left. So a man aboard now with one away.
Breaking into my neighbor's house.
Couldn't have
I
timed
quickly
it up
closed
any
the
better than
curtains
that.
and called
Just a cookie
911
down
on the
the middle.
phone.
I mean, those are the ones you dream
Stay
about.
quiet
Ones in the
as to
cage,
not
you're just
alert the
hoping you get in
woman.
the ball game. Right down the
The
middle, not a whole
operator
lot of
said that the
velocity,
police would
right
get there
on
in
top
about
of it.
2
And
minutes.
that one is lifted in
I
the
then
air.
heard a shriek
And there's
coming
two
from my
away.
neighbor's house.
Maybe caught
I
that
looked
one
out
off
my
the edge just a
window
little bit.
and I
Couldn't
saw my
quite
neighbor
reel it up
attacking
enough
the
to really
woman who
drive
was then
it.
screaming at the top of her
And now the catcher
lungs.
comes up to hit.
I
Harry
was still on the
Ford.
phone, and I told the operator that my neighbor was now fighting against the woman.
Check swing. Did he
By
go?
now, the
Yes,
police
he did.
got there, and they had to taser the woman for how violent she
Here at the top of
was.
the second.
She was spouting swears that would make a sailor blush.
In the
She
air,
was
right
moving
field.
uncontrollably. The police took a knife and were
Makes
looking
the
a gun
catch
away
up
from the
against
lady. She started to say that she was going to kill me and my dogs and burn my house down. I think she was high and thought that my neighbor's house was mine due to how similar the houses looked.
Number 2. The batter
I
now,
was stunned,
Michael A.
looking out
Taylor.
my window, while the thought of what that
First
woman would do
pitch
to me and
just
my dogs
misses.
if she got me. I then started to cry, holding my dogs close to me.
Into center.
I didn't know what to
Rodriguez
do,
under it.
so I kind of just sat there until I fell asleep. I heard my parents
Here's
opening my
O'Neal
door,
Cruz.
saying they were home. I didn't know what to say, but I then told them to talk to the
Started a
neighbors
little
next
too
to
early.
us.
Strike one.
Days went by, and now they insist that I can't stay home alone anymore.
Headed down the line. Henderson on
Image
the
of a
move.
glare out of my
Into
head,
this one, it
and
drops
I now
foul.
sleep with both of my pit bulls just to feel safe. I know I'll be
That's
safe
just
now,
downstairs.
but knowing what that
All
woman was
tied up,
capable of
bottom half
doing
of inning number
just
2.
scares me.
That
If
misses
that
the
woman
zone.
didn't break into
Down
my neighbor's
2-2.
house and broke into mine instead, I just know me and my dogs would be dead.
And now the
Stay
DH.
safe out there.
Up and in. And that is ball one.
For reference, I'm a 23-year-old female. The story took place when I was 17 years old and home alone, when my parents took a trip out of the U.S. to Toronto, Ontario.
Still tied at 0.
We lived there
That's
for
the
3
third.
years for my father's job when I was a
This
child.
one in the air,
So they
center
were visiting
field.
with friends that they had made when
Junior
we lived
right
there.
there to make the grab.
My older
We're back to
brother
start
was
the
out of
third, and
state
there's a
in
new arm
college
on
at
the
the
mound,
time,
Luis
so I was
Ortiz.
alone for the week. It was a Friday
Justin
night,
Turner up to
and one
bat
of my
next.
good guy
Lays
friends was
off for a
supposed to
ball.
spend the night with me, so that I wasn't alone for the weekend. Something came up and he had to return home for the night, leaving me home alone. I wasn't
And
worried
another
or nervous at all because I had been staying home alone since I was 12 years old. And as I got older,
Now it's even
I
up.
spent several
Let that
nights
change
alone.
up. Got away
My
with
friend
one
ended
there.
up leaving
And
at
he'll
around
take
10
it,
that
but
night.
doesn't want to make that mistake again.
I texted him,
Cruz.
letting her know that he had to leave and
Sends
that
it
I'd be
across
alone
to
for the night
first.
now.
Turner is out.
She told me it was fine,
And
but
here's the
to just be
first
careful
baseman,
and make sure
Willie
the
McCovey.
alarm was on. So
And
I
that
got
one
ready for
fouled off.
bed, and I decided to sleep in my
And the
parents'
right-hander
bedroom
deals.
because they had a huge TV in their
Fouled
room
off. He
with
was
cable
late.
access, which I didn't have in my room. I turned the house on and got in bed
Can't glove it
and started
cleanly.
looking for a movie on cable to
But
watch.
plenty of time to recover.
My dog
and
was
that's the
in the
second.
bed with me,
Here's
so
Acuna
I knew she
now.
couldn't have done
Those
anything
plays
to
can be
cause what
tricky
happened
in
next.
routine, but that doesn't mean it's
About
always
an
gonna
hour
be
had
smooth. She
passed,
delivered a
and
good
I was
play
flipping
right
through
there.
the channels
Cruz out
when
of
my
first.
house alarm suddenly went off. I immediately looked at the alarm unit by the bedroom door
Here's
and
a
saw
new
the
pitcher
red
from the
light was
pen,
flashing
number
on and
1.
off.
And
I
here it
froze.
comes.
It was a
Swing
very
and a
loud and
miss.
repetitive beeping sound. I think it took me about 15 seconds
one
just to
fouled
process
off.
what was happening. Did the alarm just go off by itself?
Pitch
I thought,
misses. And that's ball
there's
1.
no way a door opened. Immediately, I started thinking of anyone and everyone I knew that could have possibly opened one of the doors to my house with a key.
Ripped, but it
You know,
goes foul.
since all of the doors were locked.
One down,
I knew my
base is
brother
empty.
wasn't coming home for the
In the
weekend.
dirt, 1 and 1.
I knew it wasn't my friend who had recently left because I had just received a text saying he was home. I went through all of my friends that I could think of, and every single one of them was either out of town or busy. I knew none of my neighbors would have opened any of the doors either. I went through all of this in my head in that 15 seconds that I was frozen in the bed.
This to center
Finally,
field.
I snapped out of it, and I ran to my parents' bedroom door, closed it, and then locked it.
Now
I
it's the
refrained from turning
DH,
the alarm
David
off because I knew
Justice.
that it automatically calls the police once it hits 1 minute of going off. And I was
Tapped at
also
the plate,
thinking
but
aloud
it's a foul
to scare
ball.
away whoever just broke into my house. After I locked the door, I went to my mom's night table and took out a revolver that she kept in there, just in case of
Well, if he's going to do
emergencies like
something
this
special
one.
right here, it's going to have
No,
to happen
I'm
with 2
only about
strikes.
5'4", and I knew that if anyone came through that door and
It misses. It's a strikeout.
they would have easily
Here's the
succeeded.
left fielder, Ricky
I
Henderson.
wasn't taking any chances. I took out the gun, made sure it was loaded, and took the safety off.
And that is strike one.
A lot of
Held
times
the
you'll
gun
see a
up,
pitcher
and I
maybe
pointed it
double
at the
up on
door,
pitch.
but I
This guy
kept my
will throw it
finger
3
on the
times,
trigger,
4 times
as
in
you're
a row.
supposed to do,
Hitters
until you
just
know
can't
for
let
a
off
fact you're going to shoot.
Lifted in the air, right center
I
field.
couldn't believe that I was
No
holding the
trouble
gun
here.
and
Puts
pointing
it
at
away
something,
for the out.
and
2
possibly
away now.
someone, with the intention to shoot if they proved to be
And
dangerous.
next will be the cleanup hitter.
I sat
Ken
there
Griffey
mentally
Jr.
preparing myself
Fly
to
to
shoot
left
whoever
is
managed to
first
get to
time.
the door.
Here's the pitch. Runner breaks
This
for
is something
third.
I never
Strike
thought
in
I'd
there.
have to do.
And the throw's
I
offline.
remained
Safe
calm
at
and
third.
I didn't let my emotions or fear get the better of me. I knew I needed to stay quiet and keep my head clear in case something actually happened. I was kneeling in the police position for what felt like forever,
Ready to go for the
but
last
I'm
half
sure
of the
only
inning.
about
Here's
2
Andrew
minutes truly
McCutcheon to hit.
passed. The
In the
alarm
air,
was still
pretty
going
deep out
off,
to center
and
field.
I decided that
Griffey
I would
gets
call
under it.
911 just in case
Brings
the
it
alarm
in.
system
Runner
malfunctioned
tags at
and didn't
second.
call the police.
In there,
Come
safely.
on.
911 explained to them everything that was
Hit
going
Ryan
on,
Reynolds.
and they sent 2
1-for-1 with
police
a single
officers
so
my way.
far.
The dispatcher stayed on the phone with me.
Well, here's a
I was
good
out there.
opportunity in this inning to get on the
They chased
scoreboard
things
after
stealing
that
the
leadoff
of
hit.
my house.
Harper Order coming up right behind him. This is where they need to get going.
Off the alarm to put the gun away. I
The
opened the
winning
front
run
door
at
and
third.
talked to the
Here in
officers.
extra innings.
They told me they found no
Fights that
sign
one
of
away. The
breaking
count
on the
remains
outside of the
0-2.
house. They asked me a few questions about what happened, and I explained everything to them. They again asked me if I wanted to do a sweep of the interior of the house, just to see if anyone had
Rookie
broken
Ryan
in and
Hayes,
put some
the
hits
next
somewhere.
Pirate to hit.
Looking back, I can't believe how stupid my answer was.
Swings and misses.
No,
Strike one.
it's okay now. The top security
there
there would
for a
remain
strike
in
at
the
the
area,
bottom of the
and
zone.
they told me not to hesitate to call back if anything
He
else
goes
happened.
down looking.
I walked them out,
Back
locked
here
the
in
door
Pittsburgh.
behind me,
And here is
and went
Ty
back into my
France.
parents' room. Made sure my
pitch.
dog wasn't spooked at anything that
Bounce to the
happened.
left side.
Being in the 20-pound conference manual,
There's one.
I knew
But
exactly
no
the
throw
guard
to
dog
first
type.
as he'll hold on to it.
I then proceeded to finally call my parents and
Crawford
tell
now
them what
up in
happened.
stance on that left side.
My mom
He's
has
0
always
for
been
1.
an extremely calm person, so she didn't panic.
First pitch doesn't find the zone.
I guess I
Way to
have
lay
to
off
thank
that
her
pitch
for my
down.
calm attitude during all of this, because I'm a lot like her in that sense. My dad, however, was very clearly worried
Swing and a
about me.
drive, deep right field.
Being that I was his
McCutcheon
young daughter
on a
and
dead
alone,
sprint, racing back.
they asked me
He
if I was
bangs off the
okay,
wall.
and if I wanted them to come home early. I told them that wasn't necessary.
Throw is cut off,
I'm sure
goes to
nothing like that
first.
would happen
To
again,
first,
since
and
the
he beats
alarm
it.
probably
Everyone's
scared them
safe.
off.
Next to hit,
I got the
Harry
phone with my
Ford.
parents, and I realized that I had to turn the alarm back on. So I went to the alarm system,
On the ground.
nailed the code,
And that's
and pushed
just
that.
foul.
Well, all eyes
Nothing
on the double
happened.
play ball in this spot.
Wasn't
No
turning
better
back
way to
on.
get out of this inning.
I was confused at
And a
first.
pitch.
But then I realized the alarm doesn't go
Squirts away a
off
little
unless
bit.
every door in the house is completely shut.
But
My
no
phone's
advance from the
locked.
runners.
Shit. I heard out loud. I had the realization that I could now go around the house and look for what door had been
2
open
on, 1
and set
out.
the alarm off in the
And
first
down on
place.
strikes he goes.
This
Now 2 away.
I realized how stupid
Turner
I was
climbs
to
in
tell
on
the
that right
police.
side. 0 for 1, he grounded out in his
Search the
first at
interior
bat.
of the house. I'm losing my paper.
And ball one.
Again, mentally preparing for the worst. Ground level of my house, holding the gun.
On the mark there.
Hands.
Now 2-0.
Good
Made
spot
it
for
to
the
the
hitter.
hallway where
Definitely
the
has
door
the
into the
advantage in
garage
this count
was.
with runners on. Look for him
It
to
was
be
there
aggressive
that I
on this next pitch.
Ground ball to
wide
middle. That's a
open.
base hit.
Chills
Flying around
body.
third is France. Here's the throw. He's safe.
They succeeded. Now we had 2 ground level windows in our garage.
Well done.
So
Drives in the run.
there to
Timing
get
on
into
the
the
swing was
house was
good.
not
Able to shoot the ball
far-fetched.
up the middle. Didn't square it up as much as he probably would
Garage
have liked,
and held
but
the gun in
that's a
front
good
of me.
approach paying off.
McCovey at the plate with 2 away. Swings through that one.
Any sign that they were opened. Needed to shut the door.
Swing and a
blocked it.
And he got him to chase.
Again.
Late sink on that
It worked this
fastball.
time.
Out of the hand looks so good, and then
Yes.
by the time he gets in the
It's
hitting zone, hard to get the barrel
house
to
with
it.
the gun in hand.
And a curve misses outside.
The entire time, I would have anyone. I really wouldn't have to use that gun.
Wouldn't chase that time.
Found nothing and no one. So my parents' bedroom door locked at night.
2 outs.
And with the revolver under my pillow for the rest of the week. When my parents returned home from the trip, I went to the windows in the garage to see if they had been forced open or anything like that.
Got him
As
looking.
I figured, there was no evidence of forced entry. My parents concluded that the door to the garage must have not been shut all the way, and a gust of wind came from outside to the garage, and then swung the door to the house open, causing the alarm to go off. We never figured out what actually happened that night. Since then, I have had one more time for a possible break-in when I was in college, and I came home for the weekend. That story wasn't as scary, but I was alone again, and my parents were doing the same thing during the first time. Visiting friends in Canada. Now 23 years old. 6 years have passed since that night. Whatever it was, whatever truly happened, well, it continues to be the scariest night of my life. I can't bring myself to imagine what would have happened if we didn't have the system. And if we didn't have those gun to feel safer.
Fucking Kenley Jensen was mowing them down.
What ends up actually happening? I advise everyone in this story, always make sure your home has an alarm. So always keep a gun in the home to protect yourself.
Ground ball to the right side. On to Crawford. That's out number 3. Now into the ball game on defense.
Back in the day, I used to work for the National Trust up in Scotland. It was a really lonely job, with a lot of it spent either driving long distances or walking around the Highlands in dire weather conditions. At work, I used to drive around this big 4x4, but off-duty, I had to use my own, which was absolutely crap. So this one Saturday, I planned to drive back down to England for my mom's birthday. Me and my boyfriend had this whole big thing planned. I'd drive down in the morning.
Justice, left field, right field, Ricky, outfield, Griffey out.
I was massively excited about it, and massively confident that my mom would be over the moon with it. What I wasn't confident about was the ability of my poor little Nissan Micra to get me there without giving me trouble. I was driving through the Highlands, absolute arse end of nowhere and all, and the engine started making some really unhealthy noises. I pulled over to the side of the road, but I couldn't work out what was wrong.
He can. Okay.
I thought I'd be able to get it to a garage and risk being a little bit late. But when I got back in my car and tried starting it up again, nothing. The engine was trying to turn over, just never coming to life. And no matter how hard I tried or what little tricks I tried to pull, I just couldn't get the car to start. These days, I could just pull it.
Didn't need him.
Had it bloke out for repairs or a tow within an hour or so. But back then, in the age of flip-flops and spotty mobile reception, rigging down in the middle of nowhere can be a huge pain in the bottom.
Swings through that one.
Part of the order coming through now, and with one home run already in this inning, they're definitely looking to do some more damage.
That one back up the middle, and it gets through. So they get a man aboard with a one-out single.
The idea of
Just
walking
kept it
anywhere
simple.
was
Jose Hernandez on to pitch here.
Pretty tight game, so they're looking for quality pitches out of him right here. Got to do his best to keep the score right where it is.
Checks over to first, back safely.
I'm gonna take a pitch.
We had a phone or someone capable of engine repairs, but then no sooner
Now a
than I started
chance for
walking,
Ken Griffey
Sean
Jr.
suddenly appeared
And
in
the
the
first
distance.
pitch misses for ball one.
The side of the road was lined with trees, and the road kind of snaked off in the distance, so the car's
Ricky
appearance took me by
runs.
surprise
Swing
at
and a
first.
miss.
Actually,
Safe at second,
very
and that
myself,
was not
whoever
close.
it was
Man, is he
pulled over
fast.
for me.
It's so
When they
fun
did,
to watch.
I thought those prayers had been answered. But at the risk of sounding a bit melodramatic,
Next offering is in
this
for
God
a strike.
would answer prayers that
2
began
runs across in the
rather than
inning,
this
and we're in the
opposite
top half of the
number
6th.
downstairs. Anyways, the car pulls over, and this quite friendly-looking middle-aged man looks down the window, asking all right. I explain the situation to the car is.
Rudder
He
goes
says
again.
that depending
Swing
on
and a
the damages,
miss.
he might be able to give us
Third,
maybe
safe.
fix it on the cheap.
Here's the
I
second
just
baseman,
dance
Ty
a little jig,
France.
I'm so
1 for
happy.
2.
Then he invites me into his car. gives me a lift back
There's
in
a
mind.
strike. No need to offer at that
We had
pitch
a bit of
until you
small
get to
talk
2
after
strikes.
he
It's
was
just a
English
low
accent.
percentage of
Swap
success when
stories
you want to try
explaining
to go after
Stop.
that down and away pitch.
That's
We
a
pulled
ball.
That one off the mark, and
pulled out
1
his
and
mobile,
1.
started texting someone. Person.
And a pitch.
Fix my car.
Foul ball there.
He explained that up in the Highlands, it was much better to send texts with that little signal you can muster. It was a little slower in terms of response time and all, but the message actually went through loud and clear instead of garbled and spotty.
At the belt and fire.
He told me not to worry though, as his mechanic friend worked Saturdays, it was
Well, this
probably
is a
close to
guy
a
that
phone.
can be frustrating for
Those
pitchers
of you in your
because he
20s might
fouls
not
out so
remember
many
the
pitches
ritual
and
of
grinds
holding
out
your
the at-bat.
plastic
I'm sure
brick
there's
of a phone
sometimes where
high
pitchers
above
would
your
rather
head
just
to
give
try
up
and
a
force a
first pitch
text
single
message through.
than have to
But
waste
after a
6 or
minute or so
7
of that,
pitches on
my
one hitter.
Highland Samaritan assured
And a
me
base
that
hit into
the
right.
text had
Runner from
both been
third comes
received
across.
and
It's
read.
4-1.
Everything was looking hunky-dory.
Showed some
All
really
I
nice
had to do
patience
was
in
be
that at-bat.
patient
Worked
and hope
himself
for the
into a
best.
good count. Nice
Within
job
a
of
few
driving
minutes,
that pitch
the
the
kind
other way
stranger's
on a
phone
line.
had
You know,
buzzed,
hitters,
and he
they take
reported that
so
his
many
mate was
reps
on
in
the
the
way,
cages working
although
on
he
going
wouldn't
to
be
the
arriving
opposite
for
field.
another
He
20
doesn't
minutes or
always
so.
translate into the game, but right
3
there he
minutes I
did,
could deal
and he
with,
did it
and
perfectly.
if the guy could get me
And
to
now
my
the
month's
lefty.
surprise party on time,
Now 1 and
the one
1.
I'd spent a month planning, I was willing to give him everything I had in my wallet. But then, as I sat waiting with the bloke, still making the
Shortstop
same
takes the
small
ball.
talk,
Pretty easy to give
I
up on
noticed
that
that he
pitch right
changed
there.
some minor
Started on
detail in
the
his
edge of the
story.
plate with the
I
spin.
won't
You know
bore
it's
you with
going
the
to
ins
finish
and outs of it,
well
but
off
he
the plate.
basically told me his business was in one place, and then about 10 to 15 minutes later, he told me it was based somewhere
Left-hand batter
else.
waits.
I didn't jump on
That
the sudden
one hit
change
to
of
right.
detail or anything. I
McCutcheon
mean,
has it
a business
sized
can
up.
have more than one branch,
Pulls
can
it
it?
down, and he makes
And
the
people
catch.
misspeak all the time, so
coming into the game
not
now
exactly
on
going to act all
Denver
Sherlock
back.
Holmes on the
Bottom
bloke
of the
who's
6th
supposedly
inning.
doing me
Here's
a
the
favor
Pirates
in my
catcher now, Henry Davis.
That was the first red flag, you
First
might
pitch
say.
misses.
One I didn't really acknowledge until after the
Now
event
this
itself.
is in the air down the
It was
line.
the second that actually
Henderson
caught my
drifts
attention.
towards it, reaches out.
After a brief lull in the conversation, the man asked if anyone was expecting
But
me.
can't make the
He used that
play,
exact
and
same
it
phrase,
drops
too.
foul in the corner.
Expecting me.
A new arm into the
And I
game.
must have given him a funny
righty,
look or something,
Raisel
because he
Iglesias.
clarified with,
I think
you know,
closer has to
have
be
you got
one
any
of the
plans
toughest
later?
jobs in baseball. And
I started
you
telling
see
you
a
about
pretty
my
high
mom's party,
turnover rate because
how
of
I've
it.
been planning
Every
for
outing
ages, how
seems
my
to be
whole
high
family
pressure.
expected me
This
to be
one
there.
included. We'll
And
see if he
instead
can
of
wrap
showing
up
any
the win
interest or
and get himself a
enthusiasm
save.
whatsoever,
And down on
he sort of nodded
strikes.
and
And
started
that's the
staring
first
off
out.
into the distance like he was thinking about something.
Bay up for the third
That was
time
what
here.
got me, though.
Watches that one miss.
It was how he phrased the
Swing
question.
and a miss as he was out
Was anyone
front.
expecting me? And then considering he was apparently just bringing his mate to fix my
And
car,
second.
I hadn't heard what they said to each other. It all added up to a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Up next for
Although
the
moment's
Pirates,
intuition,
Andrew
but
McCutcheon.
I knew I had to do something. Anything
Here's
to
a
try to
strike.
get ahead
Heater
of what I
at
feared the most.
98.
I asked the guy how long his
That's out
mechanic
to
friend was
center
going to be, and after his long
Base hit.
and contemplative
Just
state,
gotta slice
he
that
snapped
one
right
into
back and
center.
was friendly. He checked his phone,
And that's the
then
ball
told
game.
me,
4-1 the
seems like it's
final
only
here
going to be a
today.
few more minutes. So I put my little plan into action. I told the bloke that I had to grab a few things from my car just in case it needed a tow or I had to go anywhere, and slipped out of his car and walked towards my own. Once I was there, I put on a show of looking for things, and when what I was doing in actual fact was delaying time until his mechanic friend arrived. If it was some bloke in overalls driving his work van, then yeah, I probably had nothing to worry about. But anything else, I'd put phase 2 of my plan into action. I kept at it for a few minutes, fishing around for absolutely nothing while keeping my eyes glued to the road behind us. Then lo and behold, a big white van comes from around the bend a few hundred yards behind us and starts pulling in behind the stranger's car. The van was all white, no marking on it at all, and it looked brand new. On top of that, there were 2 people sitting in the cab, not just one as I'd been expecting. Like I said, if everyone's intentions were good, then me acting a bit paranoid wasn't going to do anyone any harm. The mechanic and his friend might think that I was a bit weird, but weird I can live with. What I couldn't live with was the feeling I was walking into some kind of trap. The moment the van started to pull in behind the stranger's car, I hurried back to him and told him something like, I'm just gonna nip for a wee. I'll be back in a few. At that, I scurried off into the trees at the side of the road and kept myself crouched and out of sight as if I was actually having a wee. But in actual fact, I'm just watching the seemingly kind stranger and his friends to make sure that they didn't have anything planned. I stayed where I was, telling myself I wouldn't move until I got a good look at the two blokes who just pulled up in the van. But the minutes ticked by and no one moved. Eventually, I heard the stranger's voice calling me from the side of the road. He sounded friendly at first, and just let me know that the blokes were working on my car. And the thing was, I could see a bit of my car, and there was no one standing near it. I still felt like I was going half mad at this point, that I'd gotten myself into a tizzy and had completely overreacted. Then, right as I told myself that I was going to feel very silly after this if the guys really were there just to fix my car, the stranger's tone of voice changed dramatically. That alone sent a chill through me. But what truly terrified me was when he used my name. At no point in our conversation had we ever swapped names or introduced
Hello,
ourselves.
baseball fans, and welcome. MLB The Show brings you Diamond Dynasty Baseball. It's Bangkok and the Toronto Blue Jays.
And evidently, his was too, because he never bothered to introduce himself either. I know there's always a chance that I let it slip during our chat.
First pitch coming your way next.
I certainly didn't know his name, which made it all the more frightening when he told me to show myself.
Ready to go? And now the right
He made it
fielder,
clear that
Ronald
if I didn't,
Acuna
it
Jr.
wouldn't be good for me, and that I might actually get to my mom's party on time if I just did as he told
The
me.
wide to kick the pitch.
Squatting down among the clump of trees,
Fastball for a strike.
staying aside
And this
from
one
those
is off and
simple
running.
strangers. They made me the scariest few moments of my entire life. I didn't think it was possible that
Here's a
anyone
swing
would
and a
frighten me.
drive left field, and he knew it.
Suddenly, I heard an engine starting, but I knew from how healthy it sounded that it wasn't mine.
He wastes no time
The
on
next
this one.
I
Just
see the
like that,
stranger's
they
car
move in
drive
front.
up,
It's
and
1-0.
it's the first stranger who
And the
picked me
batter
up,
now,
not the
David
two
Justice.
strangers to the van. I thought that might mean that the van was about to
In there,
drive
and it's
off too,
0-1.
so I poked my
Well,
head
it's
out
exciting to see
behind the
the
trees so
home
we
run
could
in
get
an
a better
inning. Kind
look.
of gets the offense fired up, and you start
That's
to
when I see him
expect a
then.
big inning.
1-1.
Not
Club,
even close there.
walking through the
It's
trees
1-1.
with his head on a swivel like
Righty
he's searching for me.
delivers.
I said
Bounce to
about
the
being
right side.
wrong regarding
And
how
that one
scared I could
handled.
be. I
Throws
can
the
actually
first.
remember most of the
One
stuff
out
that
the top of
happened,
the
but
first.
after seeing that guy in
Ricky
his mask,
Henderson
quite
getting ready
obviously
to
searching
hit.
for
Good
yours
single
truly,
low in the zone
my
right there,
memory
and
actually gets
produced
a bit
exactly
spotty.
what he was looking for.
I know I just ran
Nice ground
further
out.
and faster and harder than I ever ran in my life. I
And
remember
there's a
being
ball.
sick a bit when I couldn't run any further, and I remember many cars passing me before a driver finally bothered to stop to see if I was
1-1
actually
is
okay.
fouled off.
I also remember being frightened out of my wits that the first stranger or the
Base is
guys in the
empty.
van would come across me, but thankfully that
Bounce
didn't
to
happen.
third. Turner.
Instead, I was driven to a police
Two
station
gone.
where I gave a statement.
Now it's the power
After that
speed
came
combo.
a trip to a
Ken
mechanics,
Griffey
which
Jr.
resulted in me finding out my car wouldn't be roadworthy for at least 24 hours.
He's got a rare
After
skill
that,
set out
I
there.
got a run
Wow.
to bed
Even
and
when he's
breakfast,
low on
got
energy,
myself a late
his
lunch,
stuff still
and cried
has
on the
bite
phone
to
to my
it. You
mom
just don't
in
see it
my room.
flattening out just because he's
I
tired.
actually think it was the single worst day of my life.
Left, and
I
it's
let
going to
my
be
mom
extra
down.
bases.
I had
Makes
to
the
dip
turn
into
and
my
heads
savings
for
to pay
second.
for
And
engine
he's in with a
repairs,
stand-up double.
and it was just a complete nightmare of a day. And to
Seems
top
like
it
he
all
got
off,
exactly
I
what he
almost
was
got
looking
kidnapped
for right
or
there.
murdered
Good
as
piece
well.
of hitting going the other way
I
with
just
that
didn't think
pitch to beat
things
the
like
shift.
that happened in
Not
real
a lot
life,
of
or
guys are
if they
able to
did,
do that,
I
even
certainly
with
didn't
the
think it
shift
had ever
on,
happened
because
to me.
they're looking to pull the
I was
ball
able to give a
forward,
really
but
detailed
it's a
description of the
pretty
first
easy
guy
hit if
along
you
with
want
what
it.
car he was driving, but as for the other two men,
And another
I didn't have
ball.
much to
He
say
hasn't wanted to
aside from what
challenge
their
both
van
of those
looked like.
pitches off the plate away.
The
Don't
police
expect anything
promised
down
that
the
they
heart
do
of
all
the
they
plate.
could,
You may just
and
have to
they
be patient
got
and
the
take your
first guy
walk.
in for questioning.
That's to third.
But given that he hadn't actually broken any
The
laws,
throw to
they were
first.
unable to
That
charge him
ends
with
the
anything.
Here's Kevin
The police
Kiermaier.
had asked him about the masked man in the white van, but
Pitch.
he just claimed he didn't know what they were talking about.
And he drops
According
it
to
down the
him,
third baseline.
he tried to do a favor to a
Hands
young
it.
woman
Tough
whose
play.
heart had broken
And they
down,
get the out.
and the next thing,
Well, he gave
she's
the ball a
off into
shot
the woods
there,
in a blind
but
panic.
not able to execute.
Yeah,
They
I
let
think
him
he
go,
rushed it a little
but I
bit,
know he
and
was
when
involved
guys
in it.
rush, can
And I
be
know
rough
he
up
only
or
let
can
me
be
see his
blunted
face
right
because
back
he
at a
thought it was a
position
done
player.
deal. But if that's the case, how
Swing
many
and
other
a
women and
miss.
girls have
And
his
it's
tactics
0-2.
worked on? And that's the thought I find myself living with after all these years.
Out
I can be
looking.
thankful and grateful and
Fastball
whatever
to
else I
letters,
can be
frozen for
that I
strike
didn't end
three.
up a victim that day. But I can't be the
Bobby
only
Shit
one.
in the box here.
There
Lets
have
that
to be
one go
more.
for a ball.
Girls who didn't get away. And it haunts me to
Hit on the
wonder
ground to the right side.
where they are now.
He takes it himself to the bag, and welcome back, and we've got a new arm on the mound to start the second. Eric Swanson.
Just trying to keep this one close here, and this is
Meridian.
where a bullpen can give
At
their
the time
players
of
a
this
chance to
story,
fight back into the
early
game.
2000s, I was going to college in South Florida, and I lived with my family in my hometown located in the Panhandle. It's about a 7-hour drive up through Central Florida to get between my school and my house, so I mostly went home just for the holidays. It was Thanksgiving of my junior year, and I was excited that I had been able to rearrange my midterms to be able to leave campus 3 days ahead of everyone else. I was expecting to beat the massive traffic, and I was hoping for a quick trip back home. My roommates wanted to have one last meal together before we all left for break. So we all met up at the campus dining hall around 4 p.m., and I set off on my journey around 5:30. Around 10 p.m., I was just a bit more than halfway there. I always stopped at this mom and pop kind of diner by the side of the highway, grab some food, use the restroom, and called my dad to let him know that I was okay. I didn't have a cell phone back then. Well, I hadn't been through here since summer, and unfortunately the place went out of business. So, a bit bummed out that I wasn't going to be able to get my chocolate chip pancakes, I just kept going. There really wasn't much build up around there at the time. So when I saw signs for a rest stop in, of all places on God's green earth, some bumfuck town called Alachua, I went and parked directly under the streetlight for safety and used the facilities. Called my dad on the payphone, etc. I didn't see anyone else there, except for a very exhausted-looking woman who asked me for directions, saying that she was with her husband and 2 small children. They had made a wrong turn trying to get to Disney. Alachua is about 150 miles from Disney. So I left the rest area. I was walking back to my car when I noticed a beat-up, unmarked bluish-gray work van parked very close to the driver's side door of my '95 Honda Civic. I thought, yeah, okay, that's pretty weird. Of course, it had Florida tags on it. So it couldn't have been the lady I talked to before. I distinctly remember she said she was from Virginia. I turned around and hightailed it back to the rest stop, promptly running into some random middle-aged guy who had 2 little boys with him. It turns out that it was his wife that I had spoken to before. She emerged from the bathroom a second later. I told him what was going on with the van and how I didn't know what to do. He said that he would go and check it out. So he left the kids with his wife, then walked up to the driver's side door of the van. He stood there for a moment before speaking. His voice awkwardly quivered, but I could hear him yelling from where we were standing, about 100 feet away.
Excuse me, gentlemen. We've already called the police, so I'm going to have to politely suggest that you get out of here.
He then ran back to us, grabbed his wife and kids, and pointed to me with a swift,
"You, come on, let's get in the car now."
And we all ran back to his car together. Very confused, sitting in the back seat of a stranger's SUV, while he went and used the payphone, presumably to call the police. Meanwhile, the van pulled out of there. I had never seen someone get out of there quite like they got out of there. They ran up onto the curb on their way out. They burned rubber. It was almost comical. Got there and I found out what happened. The man went to go check out the van, and he could see inside pretty well, because I had parked under the streetlight. The first thing he noticed was that all the seats except for the driver's seat had been removed. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat, and another guy hiding in the back, with a tarp laid out, and a bunch of other random items back there that I couldn't immediately identify. Neither of the men were reading a newspaper or a map. They were both apparently just sitting there, waiting. Still makes me sick, just thinking
That
about
no fast was fucking me up right now.
This happened when I was 14. I was home alone one weekend while my parents were at a work convention out of state. I was in my bedroom playing Rocket League with 2 of my friends. To clarify, they weren't in the room with me. I was talking to them on my headset. During the game, I heard a thump
2-0
from
the count.
downstairs.
Here it comes. Wouldn't chase that time.
This wasn't unusual because I have two cats who wrestle each other sometimes, and they often make a lot of noise while they're doing it.
Short hop liner handled it.
So I
short.
assumed that's what it
It's
was
a
and
1-2-3
resumed to my
inning.
game. But I slightly turned down the volume to hear if the noise persisted. 2 minutes later, I hear
Gets the
another
call from
thump,
the pen.
These are the spots relievers really
followed
make a
by
name
what
for
sounded
themselves.
like
Late
a
and
grunt.
close. There's not
Hang on,
much margin
guys.
for error, but at the
I think I
same
hear
time,
something
there's a
downstairs.
reason they're put in these situations.
Go check it out. We'll be here when you get
Swing and
back.
a miss, struck him out.
I began to make my way downstairs, thinking that my cats were wrestling rougher than they usually do.
1-0.
But as I got about halfway, I froze.
This one in the air.
I could hear what sounded like
Should have
men
this one.
whispering to each other,
Pulls it
coming from the
down.
living room. I crouched down to get a small peek into the living
So
room
it's their last chance in
and
this
saw
one.
3
Here's
men
Kiermaier down.
dressed in black.
Trying to keep
I felt my
good
chest
steam
sink in
off
when
the
I saw
bases.
them. I slowly went back upstairs, and of course, like in a typical horror film, the very last step made a loud creak.
Always feels amazing
The
getting a
entire
job
house
done when the team
went
needs you to
silent.
come through. It's just bigger than
I
your
knew
own
that they heard
individual
it.
stats. Double into the gap, and that was a really
Sitting on my
nice
feet,
swing to beat the
I
inside.
quietly went
Just
to my
beat him
room
to the spot. Kept
and
his
threw
hands
on my
all
headset.
inside that baseball.
Guys,
Just allowed
I
him to
need you to
drive
call
it into the
911.
alley right there.
There are 3 men inside my house.
Strike away.
What?
Swung on,
Fuck.
Look, I don't have time to explain.
and it hits
Just
the
call the
fence.
cops and send them to my house right now. I'm being 100% serious.
Jansen's gave it up
Then threw my
again
headset
for
on the
2
bed.
outs.
I could hear footsteps coming up the stairs.
In the air, right field.
I had to think
Acuna has it
fast.
sized up.
I knew that if I locked myself inside my room, they would know where I was. So I closed the door and snuck over to my parents' room,
Welcome back, and
leaving the door open so they wouldn't think to check it. I know the logic is flawed, but I had to think fast. 5 seconds later, I heard a pair of heavy boots hit the wooden floor, accompanied by 2 more sets. I then heard them get louder as they came down the hall and stopped outside my bedroom.
It's so fun
I
to
heard
watch.
pounding on my bedroom door,
Line drive, puts it away for the
followed
out.
by a
That
deep
swing right
voice
there
saying,
tells me he's seeing the ball pretty well. I know it didn't produce a hit, but he made solid contact, and that's all you're looking to do anytime you're at the plate.
I made a rash decision.
Runner on the move.
Made a break for my parents' bedroom window and slid it open.
Thompson.
I must have made a lot of noise while I was doing it, because I heard the footsteps coming towards my parents' bedroom now. I looked over my shoulder and saw a dark figure appear in the doorway.
Don't be surprised to see them come home first.
The man yelled as he ran towards me. At this point, I tried jumping out of the window, but the man grabbed one of my ankles. Luckily, I was able to move my feet and slip out of my shoe, and I fell onto the small roof above my back porch. The man at the window jumped after me.
Snags it
I
for the
remember seeing a
second
pair
out.
of boots coming right. I swear the man's feet would have gone right through me if I hadn't rolled off the roof at the last second.
Now, Ty France.
I landed awkwardly on my left ankle,
That
but
one
otherwise,
close.
I was
Ball
okay.
one.
During all the commotion, one of the men ran downstairs to cut me off.
Out front,
Limping
and
on one
foul to
foot,
the left side.
I made it to the backyard gate before the man grabbed me and threw me to the ground.
Kicks and deals.
I tried to yell, but the man covered my mouth with his hand as the 2 other men climbed down from the window.
Hits
The 3 of them began pulling me back into the house.
throw, and it gets away.
But before they could get me through the door,
Base with 2
I heard the sound of police sirens
Mission
closing in.
accomplished there as he picks up the RBI to give him the
The
lead.
men all looked at
Anytime
each
you can
other.
drive a ball into the gap the
Shit.
other way, it feels so good.
They dropped
And
me and ran towards the back gate. I limped my way to the front door and yanked it open and yelled at the police officers. Hey, they're in the backyard.
They hand the ball over to
3 of the officers
Juan
ran
Tim
towards the
Mesa.
backyard,
Pretty tight
while
game,
another
so
helped
they're
me to
looking
one of
for
the police
quality
cars.
pitches out of 'em right here.
They managed to catch one of the assailants, while the other 2 made it over the
On the
fence.
move.
They threw the man into one of the cruisers as I was giving my statement. Soon, the 2 friends I was playing online with pulled into the driveway on their bikes. Hey, Gabe, are you okay?
Junior now.
Yeah, I'm alright. Thanks for calling the cops for me.
Late swing.
The man that was caught was charged with burglary and attempted kidnapping. It turns out that the men broke through the basement window. I'm thankful that I managed to escape with only a sprained ankle. My lesson to everyone listening is to always follow your gut and never ignore any sounds you hear while you're home alone.
Tying run at the plate. That misses the zone. Ball 3. Towards first.
As luck would have it, I inherited a crappy piece of property in my early 30s when an uncle passed away. I know that sounds ungrateful, but if you had seen it, you would have laughed just like the rest of my family did. They teased me with countless haunted stories due to the fact that the property was in a wooded area in the middle of nowhere. I decided that I might as well go out and take a look one weekend, but no one was available to go with me. Mom was afraid for me and made me promise to call every night, seeing as I left Friday afternoon and plans to come back on Saturday. I drove a van, so I had decided that I would sleep in it, even though there was a self-contained cabin there. Unlucky for me, I was advised that there was no running water, but I had already resigned myself to fixing the place up and selling it even if I got a low price for it. When I pulled up to the driveway on the 4-acre property, I felt shivers going down my spine. I couldn't put my finger on why that happened, but I ignored it and continued to drive. The trees were so thick that I imagined myself getting lost, but soon I saw the cabin, which seemed too new to be in these shabby surroundings. There were a couple of abandoned old cars and a haphazard pile of rotting wood near the shed, which was next to the cabin. When I got out of my car, I felt icicles running through my veins. Maybe it was nerves, but I was sure I saw a shadow in the woods. I felt stupid, but I called out, "Hello?" Of course, nothing was there, and the shadow disappeared. I actually thought it might have been a bear, so I raced to the front door and fiddled with the keys, eventually unlocking the door and letting myself in. There was no furniture apart from an old table and only one old chair. It was obvious that my uncle started doing the place up, but his death intervened. Thinking of him, I worried that his ghost might be haunting the cabin. Little did I realize at the time, the scariest things were to happen outside. I started to wonder if I would stay at all, but found myself dragging my bags and air mattress in. I sat at the table and ate a makeshift meal, making mental notes about what I had to do to get the place ready for sale. Then I heard a metallic noise not far from the back door. I couldn't be sure, but it sounded like a knife or axe being sharpened. Fair enough. I do have an overactive imagination, but the sound was very real to me. Haunted stories usually don't scare me one bit, but when I looked out the back window, there was nothing to see at first. As soon as I moved to go back to the table, something caught my attention out of the corner of my left eye. I gasped when I turned back and saw what I thought was a huge, hulking silhouette staring at me from the edge of the woods. It was too small to be a bear, but why would there be a person out here in the middle of nowhere? I moved over to the window and had a second look, but it was gone. I could have kicked myself for not bringing a weapon with me. I didn't even have a multi-tool gadget. Even though I'm female and was quite tough at the time, I'd been a tomboy all my life. I always had tools on me, but all I had at the time was a flashlight. Deciding not to be brave, I stayed in the cabin and wrote notes in my journal. I froze when I heard the metallic sound again. This time I was sure that it was inside the cabin. I got up and nervously crept around, saying, "Who's there?" Believe me when I tell you that I jumped out of my skin when a shadow walked past the window. The frightening thing was, I couldn't tell if the shadow had been in the front of the window or outside. In a panic, I ran over to the window, and once again, I saw a huge silhouette closer to the cabin, but still at the edge of the woods. Rooted to the spot, I stared and barely blinked, trying my best to see if it was real. It seemed like hours went past, but eventually, I had to blink. When I did, the shadow disappeared. I really thought a crazy man was watching me, and I decided that I had to leave. But what if he was waiting for me outside? I gathered up my things and ran to the front door, but I stopped when I heard something fall over in the next room. Was he inside? I had no way of knowing, and I did not want to find out. I opened the door and ran as fast as I could to the car. I was so grateful when the engine started immediately. While driving off, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I swear, I could still see the outline of a person. But when I slowed down for one last look, they were gone. It might sound odd, but I actually gave the property away to my dad, who hasn't had any issues there at all.
I don't do much writing when it comes to stories about my personal life, so bear with me as I take you on this weird, scary, and absolutely awful experience that was my life for 2 months in 2015. The best place to get started is by giving a little background. My 2 friends and I decided we wanted to rent a house in LA since we all got jobs in the area, and had dreamt of living together after we all got out of college. We got a pretty decent price for rent that was split between all of us, but also thought that if we had one more person as a roommate, the rent would be perfect. It was a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, so we had the space. My friend Molly said she knew someone who needed a place anyways, so it would be perfect. We all met her and got along great in the short amount of time we spent with her, so we all agreed it would fit between the 4 of us. Our new roommate's name is Dove, and for the first month that she lived with us, she was amazing. She did her share of the housework, and honestly, for the most part, she stayed pretty much to herself.
You're not gonna go
She never had
freak
to
you out.
go over, never complained, and was genuinely one of the sweetest girls I'd ever met. We all used to talk about how lucky we were to find a roommate as great as Dove. That wasn't until she met the man that became her boyfriend.
You're not gonna throw Ricky out?
The first time she brought Ty over to the house, the 3 of us were shocked. He was covered in tattoos, including his face. And he reeked of marijuana and just had the worst attitude of anyone we'd all collectively had ever met. Dove, on the other hand, either seemed not to notice or didn't really care. She took him into her room, and thankfully we didn't see either of them for the rest of the night. The next morning we woke up to our TV, vintage stereo system, and a freaking microwave completely gone. Obviously, Ty had done this since he was the only person in the house besides the 4 of us girls, and we were livid. We banged on Dove's door until she came out and confronted her about it. Instead of denying it like we expected, she told us that she'd actually just given him the stuff. He said he needed it, and she just told him to take it. She didn't see the problem and got mad at us for yelling at her for allowing him to just steal our things. She said she'd replace what was taken, but that was never really the point. We decided to forgive her, but told her if she was going to continue living with us, she couldn't have Ty over again since he was clearly terrible. She didn't like that, but agreed. A week went by and nothing of significance happened. Then one random Tuesday night when the 3 of us were watching a movie while Dove was out, we heard the door open and torn a shock. In walked Dove, holding the hand of Ty. She walked right by us like we told her the week before meant nothing to her and slammed the door when they got into her room. We decided on spending the night in the living room to possibly prevent him from taking anything else, but not even that worked. On his way out, Dove told him he could take whatever he wanted from the fridge. He grabbed a grocery bag and practically acted like he was shopping as he took most of what was in there as we yelled at Dove that he was not allowed to take our stuff again. They ignored us like we weren't even there. Neither of them would even look in our direction. Ty just walked out of the door, and we stared as Dove made her way back to her bedroom, saying nothing, as we asked her to explain what was going on with her lately. It didn't take long for us to realize Ty had done her pills, and it was just her hookup. That's why she never said no to him. To her, It seemed like getting what she wanted was all that really mattered.
And a foul ball.
We watched for months as she deteriorated in front of our eyes, and the three of us had to move everything into our bedrooms to make sure it wouldn't get stolen in the night. We saw locks on all of our doors since Dove and Ty constantly had random druggies come over to our house. No matter what we did or how much we begged, Dove refused to see things logically from our point of view. So we did what any sane person would do in a situation like this. We waited for Ty and his friends to come over, and we promptly called the police. They told us to leave the house before they got there. And we went to our neighbor's house and watched out the window as an actual SWAT team arrived and raided the place. Ty and a couple of his friends were arrested for multiple different things involving drug possession and sales, which we did mention, but we never expected this kind of reaction from the police. Dove was let go since Ty took the blame for everything. We were relieved. We thought maybe this would mean that Dove could finally kick this habit, get some help, and just be done with that monster. They did end up searching the whole house, including our bedrooms, and the place was a disaster by the time we were allowed back in. Dove was irate. She screamed at us and told us that we ruined her life. We tried telling her that she needed to get help, but she refused and said that she'd be moving out as soon as possible since we'd apparently betrayed her. We felt bad for her in the situation that she was in, but we were kind of relieved too. You know, a couple of weeks after Ty's arrest, we were all hanging out in the living room, not expecting what was about to happen. All of a sudden, the door burst open, and in came 4 guys wearing blue and black ski masks. They ran over to us as we were screaming and grabbed the 3 of us as one went into Dove's room and pulled her out as she was kicking and screaming. They dragged us outside, put us in a van that was waiting outside with the driver as the rest of them piled into a car behind us. I was positive the neighbors had heard what was happening, and all I could do was hope that one of them could call the police. Once we were in the van, one of the men took our phones and told us all to be quiet. He drove for at least an hour with no words spoken until the van pulled over. They opened the door and threw us out. We were standing in the middle of a dirt field as they tied our hands behind our backs. Dove seemed to calm us as we all were beginning to beg for our lives. They told us we shouldn't have ratted out Ty, and that we'd be paying for it with our lives. We all started to cry and beg and plead, but Dove, she seemed like she was laughing. And she started cracking up and calling us babies for crying. She told the guys to untie her hands and that it was a funny joke, but that she was over it and just let us go. Instead of doing what she said, one of the guys just decked her really hard in the face and told her to shut up. And she hit the ground hard and then started crying herself. I actually believed then and there that I was going to die. These men were going to murder us, and that would be it. I was just hoping that they'd find my family so my family could maybe get some closure for my death. And those were the thoughts that I was thinking. Begging wasn't doing anything. We watched in horror as the men who had taken us began digging these large holes just in front of us. And I was sure that that's what we would be burning. Just as I started to come to terms with the fact that my life would be ending that night, in the distance I could see flashing lights speeding towards us, and I burst into tears. We were saved. The men tried to run, but it was a big dirt field and there was nowhere for them to go. The police officers got over to us, untied our hands, and thankfully they were able to apprehend all 4 men, and we were escorted to the hospital. We didn't have any serious injuries, so we were let go that night. We all eventually went to my mom's house just outside of LA and waited to hear from the police about what was being done to ensure these men stayed in jail. They were all charged with kidnapping and assault as well as conspiracy to murder. All 4 of them ratted on each other as well as Ty, and their sentence ranged from hanging on 17 to 25 years. And we were glad this meant none would have the chance to finish what they started anytime soon. I guess that night was a wake-up call for Dove, as she was also arrested and tried for being an accomplice. All of my roommates have kept in contact, except obviously Dove, but we agreed we didn't want to live in that house after that happened. I still live with my mom. Molly and our friend Jenna live together in a small apartment in LA, and we all get together from time to time for lunch. I have PTSD from that night and still get nightmares about it. I'm just glad I have my parents to help me get through it. And I urge anyone to be there for their friends if they notice red flags alluding to drug abuse. Even if they say they aren't ready to quit, sometimes just Knowing there is a person that cares means more
0-1.
than you'll never know.
That one ripped right center field. And it one
I hate
hops the
dogs.
wall.
Please don't be mad at me when I tell you
And
that.
that's a double.
I'm not some psycho that thinks dogs don't have souls or they're evil. I actually used to love dogs. I was so excited when I moved in with my buddy who had 4 of them, so you can imagine I was a little disappointed. And he told me not to interact with them. He said that they were only tame around him and his girlfriend, and if anyone else came near them, they'd, quote-unquote, freak out. It was a little scary to think about 4 very large dogs who hated me living only a wall away, but my friend was usually pretty good about locking his door when he left or putting them out in the backyard if he was going to be gone longer than a day or so. One summer, my roommate said he and his girlfriend were going to visit his family a couple of states away and that he'd be leaving the dogs in the backyard for a few nights. He had automatic feeders, and the dogs had access to this weird pedo-activated watering system, so there was no need for me to go out and give them anything. The backyard was pretty huge, and he assured me that they'd be fine and out of my way all weekend. I felt safe knowing that they'd be out of the house. No one was able to control those dogs except my roommate, so keeping them away from all the people while he was gone was definitely the right move. The day came when my roommate and his girlfriend left. I woke up and went downstairs for some coffee and looked out the sliding glass door at the 4 dogs as they stood there staring at me. Now, these were huge German shepherds, so seeing them growl at me but not being able to do anything about it kind of made me laugh a little bit. I went through my regular morning routine and got ready for work. I left the rest of the day and came home around 6 p.m. after going to the gym. As I entered the kitchen, I noticed something was very wrong. There was glass all over the kitchen floor, and the sliding glass door was shattered. And that's when I started to hear the growling coming from behind me. I didn't even have to turn around to figure out what the sound was coming from. I did what any smart person would do and ran as fast as I could up the stairs into my room. The whole time I was running, it felt like that dog was going to latch onto my leg at any moment. I slammed the door shut behind me, grabbed at my pocket to get my phone out and call 911. Except it wasn't there. The pocket was empty. I wanted to cry when I realized that I left my phone in my car in the gym bag. I felt so stupid. And you're probably wondering why I didn't just call for help outside the window. Well, I would have if we didn't live a mile from the next house. My roommate insisted on living in the country so his dogs could have a big yard to run around. I was really regretting moving in as I sat there wondering what the hell I was going to do to get myself out of that situation. I didn't even know where the other dogs were. I had only seen one when I made my way upstairs, and I guess I could have overlooked them in a panic. Maybe the others were chasing me too. I leaned against the door and sat there for a few seconds before bang, something huge and heavy was smashing itself against the door. Grounding came soon after, and I quickly realized the dogs were actually trying to get into my room. I didn't know if they were rabid or something, but I couldn't just sit there and wait for them to get to me. With the progress they were making on the door, I knew that they'd get to me at some point. The banging didn't last long before the scratching started. It was even louder than the banging and would quickly grant them access into the room if they continued to tear at that door, clearly very flimsy. I ran into the connecting bathroom and closed the door behind me. Listening to them scratch and gnaw their way through my door was mental torture. Getting ripped apart by dogs was not the way I wanted to leave this world. There isn't a single moment in my life where I wished I had access to a landline until that moment, just then. I heard the door finally giving way, and the dogs finally entered my room as they growled and barked. It was the kind of growl where, even without seeing, you could tell that their teeth were showing. I still couldn't tell how many dogs were out there. I just knew that it was more than one. I tried my hardest not to move or make a sound, but the sweat on my hands made a squeaking sound when they slid across the floor as I tried to get up. My heart dropped and I knew I was screwed. They started their assault on my bathroom door and I had no choice but to get into my bathroom counter and climb through the very small rectangular window about 3 feet above the sink. I squeezed myself through and laid on the roof out of sight of the dogs in case they got into the bathroom as well. Hours went by before they got in. I felt safe though. This was the moment I realized that I had an injury on my left calf. The adrenaline must have worn off because the pain was getting worse by the second. I pulled up the leg of my pants and revealed a pretty severe bite along the back of my leg. And I kept wondering how long I didn't notice when it happened, but there was no changing anything then. Thankfully, the bleeding had mostly stopped, but I still wrapped it up with the flannel that I was wearing. I didn't need it exposed to whatever was on that roof. It was obviously the only choice I had was to wait on the roof for my roommate to get home a couple of days from then. I couldn't jump down because the dogs would get me. If I did jump down, I wouldn't be able to drive away because my car keys were downstairs in the house, and I wasn't going to risk going inside again. I was safe on the roof, and that was all that mattered. I didn't have food, but thankfully there was a spigot only a few feet from where I was sitting. It was a considerably large house, and the spigot was installed to easily hose off the roof if needed. I never knew what that was necessary for, but I, of course, was grateful to have access to water for the next couple of days that I guess I would be spending on that roof. The hunger wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. The worst part was hearing the dogs make their way through the house at night looking for me. Thank God they never found me, though. My friend came back Monday morning and was shocked to find me on the roof. He gathered his dogs in his bedroom, helped me back into the house. When he found out what happened, he begged me not to tell the police or animal control. But I had no choice. One of his dogs had bitten me, and they were so vicious that...
Alright guys, I'm gonna be back.
I had no doubt.
We'll take a quick shower.
Hey guys.
That they probably killed somebody. I went to the hospital and was treated for the bite. I was advised to get a rabies shot treatment.
first one on the bed. Take a shower.
Alright. Hey guys, we are back. Call us gonorrhea, cause we're back. Or is that herpes? So, we will now, might go do, okay, look at that. It's, see if we can make it to LA. If we make it to LA, we will attack LA. If not, we will be going to do our... Oh yeah, we're not making it to LA. Yeah. Alright, we're going to do some road to the show. Probably get about an hour of that in. And be on our way today. Me and the wife are going to be going out. On the last episode of this, we what did this change? No. Motions and sounds. You know what? I like that one, so we're taking that one. We're changing that up too. So now we'll go head into first game in AAA. Making our debut against the Bulls. Let's see some other stuff. Let's see where we are top prospect wise. Jackson still. You got the Paul Skews. How's he doing in the major leagues? He's 1-2. ERA's 2.75. So he's doing his duck dizzle up there after being caught up. He's the third ranked prospect. See who else we have that's in the major leagues. It's on the prospect list. Bonds AAA. This Noble Meyer, kid stud, ranked number 13. Single A. Xavier Isaac. Which both of these guys we get cards of. Single A though, that's wild. Harry Ford. He's struggling. Still ain't hit the top. Oh, there's Jason Dominguez. He's yet to be caught up in AAA. He's hitting 255, 7 home runs, 22 RBIs. I'm coming for you, Jason. Jared Jones, 1-2, 3.90 ERA. He's struggling a little bit. Looks like we still haven't hit the top 50. How close are we, though? 67. We're coming, guys. We're coming. How are these guys doing? 25-33. 11 games out. Braves are in first place now. No, they're in second place. I'm sorry. They're 3 games out. Y'all just need to call me up. I'll make that. All right.
Neighbor's flat. Someone was coming down the stairs, and it sounded like they had dropped a really heavy bag.
Into the ballpark.
But then I heard it again,
We bring you triple
and
A
again.
Daniel
Thinking it would
Snyder
be this
getting ready
close,
to
Too
hit.
bad.
I thought. But I didn't think much of it. Soon after this, I
Hit
saw
hard.
They sit up the middle.
window.
Lead runners
I went
around
to the main
second.
door to
Here's
let
the
him in,
throw.
and I could see
Pulls into
blood
second safely.
everywhere.
1 out.
A bloody handprint on our door. I was shocked. I then told my boyfriend that there was
he did
blood
not take
everywhere.
long to announce his arrival.
Close the door.
What a moment.
He replied,
The first baseman will
Then,
hit next.
I heard my
0-2,
neighbor
Bucks
saying
and
to me
Fires.
that
Got the strikeout.
stab the woman who
Huge
regularly
K
visits
there.
me in a very calm voice. I closed the door.
So 2 down. The
The
catcher
woman was
digs
lying
in
in the
now.
middle of the road in front of the house, not moving at all. By this
the middle.
time, the ambulance and the police were at the scene too.
Whips it to first
But it
on the
took our
run.
neighbor
And
closed
they
down the
get the
house
out.
and the
So
whole
they
street
strand
as
him.
well. We were then
And here's the
told
first
that we
baseman.
weren't allowed to use the hallway, as it was a crime scene. So we couldn't leave the house for a while. I had noticed blood coming down from the drain pipe too in the backyard.
Grounds this one to short.
God knows
Snyder.
how. About 5 weeks
There with
later,
plenty of time.
the police were
Inning over.
knocking on our door,
An inning in the books.
asking if we saw our neighbor, as he had left the hospital, and they're very concerned for his safety. And they asked us to contact them immediately if we seen him. The light in the hallway
Hit hard on the
wasn't
ground
working
to
for a
short.
while,
There with plenty of
so I
time.
asked my
Inning
boyfriend
over.
to have a look
So
at
no
it,
run.
as I didn't want to bump into the neighbor in
2
the
outs.
dark.
Runners at first and second.
It went
The
outside and
shortstop,
took it
the
apart.
next to hit.
We later found out that it wasn't working because it was on the neighbor's electrical circuit, as his electricity was turned off.
Grounder to short.
While we were in the hallway,
Fires
unexpectedly,
it into second.
the neighbor
Out with room
opened
to
his door
spare,
and checked
and
what
that's
this noise was. We were shocked. When did you come home? We asked. We didn't hear you coming in.
It just misses.
It's
The
because
ball
I
and no
didn't use a
strike.
key.
Getting deep into this
So
one,
if you
and they
lock yourself
haven't had
out,
an
just
answer
ask
for
me.
what he's been doing
I
on
can
the
open
mound.
the doors
He's
for you.
really executing well.
I
in
guess
this
this was the moment when we were truly scared for our lives.
Up and in.
He then
2-0.
explained that he came home because he feels completely normal, and he felt like he shouldn't be in a mental hospital. He didn't want to kill that woman. He just stabbed her in her thigh because she
Fell back
provoked
our
him.
way, and that's out of play.
Keep in mind,
The Stripers
the police never
trailing by
confirmed
3,
anything
and
to
we're in the
us.
top half of the
They
sixth.
just said that it was close to a murder investigation.
Swing
We
and a
went
pop
back to
up
the
in double
flat,
ground.
and we were too scared to even call the police, as it would have been pretty
Calls it
obvious
in,
that
and
we
there's 2
reported it.
away.
Later that
Daniel
day, the police
Snyder
came back
now at
and
the
took
plate.
him,
1 for 3.
and they told us off in front of him because we didn't report him. We never saw the neighbor again
Don't
after
go back
that.
on that one.
And to this day, I still have
They're
no
gonna make
idea
something
what's
happen.
going on with him.
Now is the time.
The other
They need
issues
to
with the
cut
house
this
became
margin
severe
before
as
the closer
well,
comes in.
so we
Started
moved
to
out
swing,
as soon
but
as it was
held up.
possible. We now refer to that house as the Horror House. This happened 9 years ago.
Let's go. That's up the middle.
And handles this chance.
And it moved into a
Let's go.
downtown Paris. I had to start all
That's
over
a hit,
again
right?
from scratch.
And next, the
Well,
cleanup hitter.
I did the mistake to let my ex-girlfriend keep a lot of my furniture, kitchen cutlery, pans,
Tying run, waits
coffee
at the
machine,
plate.
etc. At the time,
Dives and
I
can't
worked
hang
as a
on.
waiter, so
The
I
throw
could only
is
afford
still
it.
in
No,
time.
he's so
They do get the
slow.
State building. It was really old and barely even clean, but at least I had a roof over my head. The first 2 weeks, nothing had
2
happened,
for 4. I'm okay with that.
but quickly, I began to hear some talking at night. It was kind of like mumblings. It basically said,
The batter now,
"Just go and
Daniel
die already."
Snyder.
When I looked into the door of Judah, I saw a scrawny, shirtless guy smiling and
that one
scratching the
fouled
door
off.
with his finger. This became a thing every 2 or 3 nights. He would come and threaten me through the door, or sing songs with a really childish
Not even
voice.
close there.
I thought
And now
about
it's
opening
even
the
1
door
and
and
1.
asking him what he wanted, but I was afraid that he had a knife or something, and I couldn't see his hands while looking into the door of Judah.
Close one,
What really
but
stunned
doesn't
me
get the
was
call.
that he acted totally normal whenever I stumbled upon him during the day, and he actually denied being the one to do this at night. I even got mad at him for it, but he seemed to genuinely not understand what the hell I was talking
That's
about.
great
One
discipline
day
at the
I came
dish.
home with
He
a girl
fell
that I
behind
met at a
0-1
bar that I was
and
working
didn't
at.
overextend or
For
get
some
greedy.
reason, she
Now
left
he's
during the
got a
night,
favorable
and I went
count
back
on
to sleep.
3-1.
The mumbling
3-1
started
couldn't come
again,
up with it.
only this time it felt really close.
And here's the first
I
baseman.
opened my eyes,
Such a
only
good
to
hitter
witness
with
this
runners in
my neighbor
scoring
now
position.
headbutting the wall.
Keeps the heart rate
It
low,
seemed to sound like
maintains
a mix
focus,
between
and
religious
doesn't shift
chants
approach
and
in
also
run scoring
lullaby in
opportunities.
slow motion.
What an asset in the
I was honestly
lineup.
totally
That's a good
paralyzed
at-bat
by the
right there.
fear.
He's down
I
early in
tried to
that plate
communicate
appearance,
with
but
him,
works the walk.
but he was just grinning,
Next up,
and he
Nick
ended up
Moore.
exiting the apartment by himself. I decided I had enough, and finally decided to call the police.
On the ground to
They took
second
him in
might
all
be two.
right, and he
There's
ended up
one.
getting pulled to his seat.
And that's two.
Apparently, this guy had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was put in a psychiatric hospital because of it. He wasn't supposed to live at his place anymore. He had apparently ran away from the hospital 10 months ago.
On the ground to
Yeah,
third.
I might even get a hold of that.
Sent into the
Fires it into
cycler
second.
after bashing
They're
a
in
shovel
plenty of
into a
time,
postman's
ends the
head, putting him into a coma.
Next is the
He did
designated
that for
hitter, Junior
absolutely no
Caminero.
reason at all. I never saw him again, and I moved out 2 years after
Grounder
that.
to the left side.
Was there ever anyone in your town or neighborhood that your mom and dad wanted to stay away from? For a lot of people my age,
And the
there's
throw.
almost always
Let's go.
during our
That's
childhood.
elite defensive
For
work
some,
at
it's
shortstop.
a neighbor or a certain person in town, and in some more sinister cases, it's teacher and even an uncle. But for me and the rest of the kids
Should've
in
swung
our
it back.
town, it was John Cutter.
With the tying run at the dish. And we're in the top half of the sixth.
Was said to live in this old farmer's cottage a few miles out of town.
Next
He'd
pitch
seen
is
him around
outside.
town every so often, but he'd never talked to anyone. And that was a fixture in our town. Everybody rabbiting onto everyone else. A 5-minute journey to the shops for a pint of milk. It will take a half an hour depending on who you met along the way. For that reason alone, going anywhere with my mate.
Good pitch. Good pitch. Good pitch. Good pitch.
She stopped and talked to
Trigger
almost
on the
everyone
fastball.
who walked past.
One down. Here's the catcher.
Never ever cut her. For years, I really didn't think
Out to
anything
short.
of it.
Snyder.
But what I do remember is going into town one
In
day
plenty
by
of
a
time
football
at
with my
first.
mom. As we were walking back
One
down
down.
the high street,
And now,
I disobeyed my
Daniel
mom
Snyder.
and started dribbling it back to the car. At some point, I lost control of it, and it ended up rolling down the high street
Ronda.
and stopping just
Throws
outside
the
of pub.
Two up, two
I'm
down.
0 for 2 with a walk.
Back here at the
Sitting
ballpark.
right at the
And
feet
now the
of
DH,
none other
Junior Caminero.
than John Cutter.
The 2-2.
Can I have my ball
That one
back,
is
please?
absolutely pummeled.
Cutter just stared
And no
at
one
me.
can get there.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. Get the ball in. Get the ball in.
Back at me, not saying a word.
It's a
I
leadoff
remember
double.
thinking that
The
he
winning
must
run
have heard
is
me,
at
so I asked
second
him again.
base.
Immediately after, I feel my mom grab me by the arm and march
will
me
hit
away.
next.
She drags
Winning
me all
run
the
on
way back to
second,
the car park and
nobody
starts
out.
telling me how I'm never, ever to talk to that man
Grounder, it's off the
ever
pitcher.
again. I didn't think I'd done
Safe
anything
at
wrong,
first,
but
and now we'll check on the right-hander on the mound.
We're about to lose this game.
Now, Daniel Snyder.
Oh, shoot, we didn't.
Cried my bloody eyes out, but the message was loud and clear.
I need a base hit
Stay
here.
away from John Cutter.
That one fouled off.
Then, around my teenage years, right when I was getting into that whole rebellious bugger off mom and dad phase, I ended up seeing where Cutter
Huge
actually
swing,
lived.
and this
Oh,
one
bases.
sails out of here to right
But that got
field.
me thinking.
There
that
you
the
go,
reason
bud.
I
There's
liked
my
Cutter was
bat.
because he was just
I
poor,
don't need it anymore.
socially awkward, and scabby.
And he's now hit his first homer at the
It's not the same
AAA
thing about
level.
the kid in
Nice
school that
milestone on the
children
way
used
to
to
the
bully
majors.
when I
If he
was
keeps
starting.
First
hitting
home
them out
run
of
in
the
AAA.
yard, it may speed up his
It
timeline.
wasn't his fault.
When
He
you
had
throw the
allergies
two-seamer
and his
to the
nose was
inside
always
half,
running.
you can't let it fade.
And to me, the
One-run
grown-ups
game
in our
here
town
today.
were doing
Final
exactly the
score,
same thing to
7-6.
Cutter.
A one-run
But
extra
I
inning
lost the
win.
campaign.
Watch a
Orange
forward
Fire
home run and a
excellent
walk.
crew.
I
I'm
just
Ben
saw this
Gelman.
the
Thanks for
oppressive
tuning in to
conformist
Baseball
majority
on the Show.
singling out and
And good
excluding
night,
someone who
Jim,
didn't live in the
wherever you
exact
are.
same way as them. Like I said, I didn't act on it. It just made me angry.
And now it's going to be Daniel
So,
Snyder.
in May of 1996, I'm 13 years old, and I'm in my second year of
That
secondary
misses.
school.
And that is
It's
ball
almost
one.
the start of the summer
Boz,
holidays.
24 years old, a
I
former
finished
first
school
rounder
on
back
Friday
in
afternoon, and
2017.
as I'm making the short walk home, I notice there's an unusual amount of people and cars out in the
Grounder
streets.
Oh,
left
yeah.
side. Should be trouble
Just
here.
a sweet hit
Around
double.
second on his way to
Seems I
third.
already got the sense that something isn't
Coming
quite
home.
right as I hop the back gate of my house and walk around to the kitchen.
What an
Throw is
RBI.
off
Let's go.
foot, and the run comes in to
Greeted by the
score.
sight of my mom
On the
sat
board
at our
first
kitchen
is
table.
1-0.
She's on the phone.
And next, the cleanup hitter.
A box of Kleenex with a few used tissues around. And it's evident that she's been crying.
Runner takes off for third.
So she's off. She
Let's
has
go.
First stolen base at the AAA level, and I have a feeling there's a lot more of
Every
those
year,
to
once the
come.
weather turned nice, the local primary school would take its year sixes. That's fifth graders to you Americans.
And a base
Down
hit
to the
knocks
old
in a
abbey
run.
not far from town. It's one of the oldest in the entire British Isles.
Nice
So
job
it's a
of
huge
two-strike
tourist
hitting
trap.
there.
And it's a big source of pride
The
for
left
the
fielder
people
digs
around
in
town.
now.
I'd taken part in the trip when I was that age too. Most kids' idea of fun, but there were definitely worse school trips to go on.
Bouncer out to short.
That Friday had been that year's year 6 turn to go down to the Abbey.
Whips it
About
across.
50 to
Out on a
11-year-olds would bust
play,
down
but
there in
it
the
was
late
close.
morning. And they'd come back.
Snyder,
It
who's
was
6 feet 3 inches,
She was 10
240
years old when the
pounds,
entire
and he was a
town went
10th
into a
round
frenzy
pick
trying to
in
find her.
2023.
That's why the streets were so
He
busy.
swings and fouls one
Word
off.
had gotten around fast, and people had just headed down to the Abbey in their droves to help in search. When the sun started going down, my dad and uncle ended up going
Fouled
down
off.
too
He
with
was
torches and whistles. I went to bed hoping poor Jenny would be found, at least so everything could go back to normal. But by the next morning, things only got
Punches
worse.
that one away with 2 strikes.
Overnight, a volunteer rescue worker had found Jenny's coat in some woodland, not too far from the Abbey. Police were appealing for witnesses to come forward, scouring the area around the Abbey
And
with
it's a
dogs.
foul, and the at-bat
It was
keeps
like a
going.
blue and yellow circus had come to town, honestly. Police cars of all different sizes were driving through town
Good
hall,
bitch.
He did
basically
not
camped
like
outside
that
of
call.
Jenny's parents' house. But they didn't find her the next day, or the next. And after she'd been missing for a full week, I think people started to assume the worst. Less and less police seemed to be hanging around town, and people were
And
definitely
that's
talking about
outside.
it much less. Not so much because they weren't thinking about it, but because the idea of little Jenny not coming back was just too much to bear. I understood it was a really serious
Stayed
thing,
on that
but being the
fastball.
daft 13-year-old
Bad
that I
boy flew right
was,
by me.
all I could give a
Trying to
toss
break this
about
game
was the
open.
fact
We're in
that
the top
I hadn't
of
been
the
allowed to
5th
play
inning.
out for an entire week. How long, I know, but to a kid, it
Swings
was
and misses.
forever.
And the count 1 and 2.
So when my mom and dad finally relaxed enough to let me play out with my mates, we had an absolute field way with it. What would follow was basically
And that's a
stand by
catch.
me,
Okay.
but if it was set in 90s
No
Yorkshire. Although I feel like
So
I
up
should
next,
assure you
Dominic
from the
Keegan.
get-go that there were no close calls with train bridges, and no one found any dead bodies. For obvious reasons, my mom had forbidden us from
Ground
going
ball
down to
could
the
be
Abbey.
2. Feed to
But tell a
second for
teenage
1.
boy he
And
can't go
that's 2.
somewhere. It's just basically planting a seed right there.
2
And as
outs
soon as
and
my
runners at
roommates
first and
suggested that we
second.
go look
And
for
now the
Jenny,
shortstop,
that
Daniel
was all it took
Snyder.
for us to march on the Abbey. For me, it was when a mate of mine said, "What if we find her? Just at the last minute and we save her from dying?
That one
We'd be
missed.
heroes, boys. Heroes."
Trying to keep this tied at 2. Here in the top
He was
half
right.
of the 7th.
I couldn't understand why people haven't found her yet. How the police could just appear to stop looking when a little girl went missing.
Laser to third, but
So,
handled well. That
Uncle
ends the
was
inning.
looking for Jenny Campbell, and for
And
our
the batter will
sins,
be the shortstop,
we found
Daniel
her.
Snyder.
Right when we reached the forest near the Abbey, I tell the boys to hold their horses for a minute while I run
Now
off for
this
a
is
wee.
lifted to center.
After I'm done, I hear 2 people walking through the trees.
And that'll do
From
it.
the opposite direction my mates are. Few thoughts
2
go through
away
my
here,
head.
nobody on. The left fielder getting
What
ready to
horrible
hit.
prank have they got planned since
Bulls
they're sneaking
down to
up
their
behind
last
me,
strike.
obviously, while I'm half done.
Ground ball,
And
this
2,
one should do
how
it.
in God's name have they managed to sneak around and approach from a
On
totally
to
different
first.
direction?
Ball game. He was a difference maker
I
for
think
them
I
in this
moved
one.
to turn around.
Nice
Already
effort to
in the middle
contribute
of
to the
saying,
win.
"What kind of bloody woofers are you, sneaking up on me while I'm having a..." But when I see who it is, I'm stunned into silence. It was Cutter. And he's holding the hand of a little
At the
girl
plate,
who
Daniel
looked exactly
Snyder.
like Jenny Campbell. John Cutter, the local pariah, the one people made nasty rumors about. He was about to be a hero.
Correct. In the air
Go
to
bowling.
deep
Got her.
right center,
You-
and it's
you found her.
gone. A home run.
It was the first and last thing I ever said to him. Not quite
That
loud
one
enough
felt
to alert
good.
my mates
Second
apparently,
homer this
but
series.
loud enough for him to hear. He hadn't actually seen me, so I spoke, and when I did, he and Jenny stopped and turned to look at me. It was only then that I noticed how Jenny didn't seem very happy to be rescued. She looked exhausted, pale, and terrified, with cuts and bruises all over her arms and legs.
Maybe she was just too shaken up to feel celebratory just yet. As she'd been out there for a week on her own, there's no telling what she'd had to do to survive.
Pitch misses. So a
Hunter
ball and a
spoke in
strike.
a low voice, addressing me by name. I have no idea how he knew what my name was, and I was stunned into silence for the rest of what he
And
said.
another ball.
I'm guessing you'll see why. It was a long time ago, so this may not be exactly what he said, but it's the gist of it. You're
On the ground, out to short.
he said. I just
Sends it to
nodded.
first. 2 up, 2 down.
Live on that cul-de-sac near Dodds
Taking in
Farm, don't
Curtis
you?
Meade. The Stripers trying to protect a
Nodded, noticing
2-run
that he was
lead
holding
here in the
Jenny's
back
wrist
end of the third inning.
too tight.
Bounce to the left side.
And your mom, she works in town, doesn't she? That little charity shop. All alone in the daytime. I just know.
On his backside,
I
there's
didn't really know what
on
he was
to
getting at,
first,
but
safe.
it was
So
certainly
they get
having its
one.
intended
A really
effect.
nice try there. My
You're going to
goodness.
tell everyone I found the girl. He told me. Because I did. Didn't I, Jenny?
That one not
Just
close.
Cutter said her name.
One
He
out
had to
and the
repeat
base is
himself to
empty.
get a response, which amounted to nothing more than a whimper. Jenny
This
had been
pitch
lost, you
misses,
see.
and it's 2-0.
See, the little thing wandered off on that school trip, and she'd been sleeping in the woods all on her own, all week. Isn't
And
that
that's
right, Jenny?
outside. He's had great control all game, but it's a 3-ball count now.
Jenny said.
Batter has to be ready to hit.
And the way her eyes fell made me think that wasn't quite the truth.
And there's ball 4.
So if you're gonna say anything else, little lad, whose mom works all alone in that quiet little charity shop,
And here's the first baseman.
they'll tell him something different. That'd be a lie, wouldn't it? And if you were to go telling lies about me, that'd make me very,
Checks on the runner.
very
Snyder
angry.
back in on a dive.
He continued to just stare me out
Snyder
until I
leading off
nodded
first
my
with
head
one
and
gone.
murmured in agreement. Good boy.
Pitch runner
No
breaking for
excuses.
second. Up the middle.
This little girl had
Dive,
missed her
but it
mommy
kicks
and
off
daddy
the
very
glove.
much, and I think she'd like
Doesn't
to see
have
them.
the play. And the defense comes away with nothing.
With that, he walked off, leaving Jenny by that unusually tight-looking grip.
First and
I
second,
went
one
back to
away.
my mates who
And here's the
promptly asked
catcher.
me what had taken so long. And I told them I wasn't all that surprised that they didn't believe me. Not first, anyway.
Grounds this one up the middle.
I
Oh,
gave them
what a
this
play for
attitude.
one.
You just
And
wait and
that's
see.
2.
Don't take my word for it. And they saw I
A little
wasn't
ballet
lying.
out there in the middle infield.
So,
A good flip that
Cutter
leads to
found
an
Jenny Campbell.
inning-ending
Who'd have guessed?
bottom of the inning.
Makes
And now
sense.
the right fielder
I guess he's going to be the hero now then, isn't he?
hoping to put the tying run aboard.
The three of them started going back and
Grounds it to
forth
short.
about how he deserved it after
Snyder.
all. If he'd been the one to actually find her,
Tosses
the
to
definitely
first.
deserves some
And to
credit,
get the
didn't he?
leadoff hitter in the 7th.
It took me a minute or two to actually find the words to say it. Like you have to understand how
Stepping in, the
conflicted I
switch-hitting
was.
shortstop, Daniel
Shut up and
Snyder.
let him take the
He's
credit.
already homered in this
And I
ball
get the
game.
biggest I told you so moment over my family. Speak up. And I'd be
And pitch
defending
misses for
Jenny.
ball 1.
Even. But I had to. What other choice did I have? I had this strong sense of morality. I couldn't possibly back someone I thought was guilty of.
Lopez, the runner at
God knows
first
what.
with 2 out.
Yes. I remember saying,
And the count 1 and 2.
Cutter found her. Well, who did? I think. There were a lot of words I could have used.
Next pitch misses
A
down
lot of
and
ways
away.
I could have
Great
phrased
job
it.
to see change
I
up out of
opted
the
for
hand
the one
and
that
lay
kept
off.
my delicate sensibilities intact. I think Cutter
Gets a piece there, we'll do it again.
Jenny Campbell. I then had to explain to them exactly what he'd said to me, but with added emphasis on the way he
Swings and
said
lifts a
it.
high fly ball
I
out
might
to
have been
left.
young, but I
Pretty
wasn't
deep.
stupid.
That ball
Something
has
was
just
wrong,
been voted off
but it
the
wasn't
island.
like I was in a position to say anything.
Flexes the power
If he was
with
psycho
that
enough
swing.
to take a little
Did it
girl like
again.
that,
Home run
he
number
was
2
psycho
of the
enough to
game.
hurt me or my
And they
mom to
add
keep
a
us
couple
quiet.
more. It's 4-1.
But then again,
They
if
are
I didn't say
feeling
anything,
great right
he
now.
would have hurt someone else.
Bases
The
empty, 1
census was
away.
clear.
Here's the
Go
catcher.
to the police as soon as possible. Tell them everything, and then get whatever protection me and my family might require.
0-2,
Shouldn't
and
say
the
that
delivery.
when I got him.
On the ground to short.
I just completely
Snyder.
bottled it. I have to start the whole thing off by
Tosses the
admitting to
first.
you that I
Gets the
disobeyed her.
catcher by
And
a
I'd be
step.
following it up with accusing the bloke who rescued Jenny Campbell of being something I can't even say here.
Snyder was just
I got it into
terrific
my
for
head
them in
that
the win.
it'd look like I
2
was
home runs
trying
in
to
the
make
ballgame. Always
excuses
great
for
to see a
myself
player
by
as locked in as he
making
was in
what
this
was the
one.
worst
Every
accusation
at bat felt
possible.
like an opportunity to see him deliver.
It wasn't looking good for me, so I bottled it up inside. I just went upstairs, trying to take my mind off it, and failed miserably in the attempt.
So up next,
On
Daniel
top of that, I
Snyder.
could barely sleep. I mean, could you if you were faced with that kind of dilemma? So that night, about 1 in the morning, I sneak out of bed and grab a cigarette from the little stash of them under my bed.
Snyder,
I
only
open up my
18
window
years
and
old,
sit.
and he was a 10th round
Actually,
pick
quite
in
dangerous now that I think
2023.
about it. Right on the edge, so my room doesn't end up smelling of smoke.
Ground ball up the middle,
Needless
through
to say,
for
the
a base
nicotine
hit.
didn't really help with the stress, but I was feeling moody and
Quick
angsty,
throw
so
back in. Lead
it
runner
suited
holds
the
at
aesthetic,
second
I
with 1 gone.
suppose. But right as I'm smoking, someone walks underneath the street light
Right
just
there,
down
we
the
saw
road.
a fastball that was
Someone who
tight,
looked
and he was
creepily
licking
familiar.
his chops as that thing was coming in. Great cut. And next, the cleanup hitter.
But it
Runners at
was.
first and
It
second
was
with
Cutter.
1 gone. And we're
And he
just
walked
getting
right
going
past our
here in the top
driveway
of
and
the
looked
first.
right up at me as he did. I was only
Hard
looking
ground
out the
ball,
window for
base
like
hit.
5 minutes tops, and I don't believe in coincidences, so
Throw
I'd
back
be
in,
willing to
holds
bet
the
it
runner
wasn't
at
the
third.
first
Base
time
is
he
now
walked by my
loaded.
house.
Only 1 away.
I was so scared that I almost fell out of the window trying
And
to
here's
clamber
the
back
catcher.
inside before he saw me, but it was no use. He knew where I lived. I was relying on Jenny Campbell telling whatever truth there was to be told. But when word actually did get around
To
that
the right
he
side.
was the hero that found
Quickly to
her,
second for 1.
I found
Back
it
to
more and more
first.
difficult to
Double
speak
play.
up
Nice
about what
job
I'd
to
seen,
get
or
over.
rather, what I suspected had
And the next
happened.
batter, Junior Caminero.
They didn't exactly throw him a parade or anything, but there was a story about it in the local paper.
On the
And it was
ground,
from
left
the regional
side,
Wrestling News
6.
channel. The hype came and
There's
went in
one.
about a week or two,
Not
and
in time at
although
first,
Cutter
it's a
didn't get
fielder's
any more
choice.
social after the fact, people's attitudes around him
That's a
definitely
hard
changed.
but legal slide
And
into
that was
second
it.
base we just saw.
For years,
That did enough to
the
force an
story
inaccurate
remained the
throw
same,
and
and
disrupt
neither
the
me
double
nor
play.
Jenny had anything else to say about it. At least until Cutter died, and then it all came out. You could probably write a whole nother report how the whole thing happened, but let's just say it was ugly. Really bloody ugly.
Lofts this
A
one
lot of
down
shouting
the
and
line
screaming,
and left, but
a
it'll
lot of tears,
trace
and a whole
foul.
bunch of regret.
Top of the
A
third,
lot of
no
people
score.
told me I should have done things that I'm not sure they'd have done if they were in my position, at least.
That one
That
finds
was
the
probably
corner.
the most frustrating
0-2.
part, trying to explain to my mom that I kept my mouth shut about it for her. And I suppose that brings us to the moral of what happened to me, or rather me and to Jenny.
I like the
And to the whole
location
reason
there,
I wrote
trying
this
to
up in the
raise the
first
hitter's
place.
eye line and see if he'll pop something
It's
up.
always better to tell the truth and face the consequences of something
Next pitch,
than keep
not
your mouth
close,
shut.
up high.
My dad explained it like a bank account. You put the truth in a box and hide it away. Only it will accrue interest
In
for
the
as
air,
long as
out
it's hidden,
towards right center.
until
On
one
the
day
move.
you let that truth out.
Makes the play.
And it's
That
bigger
is
and
out
badder
number
and more
3.
hurtful than it ever could have been otherwise.
One left on base.
His way of
The
explaining
left
it
field
summed
now
things
at the
up
plate.
perfectly.
And he's
And
got
if I could go
serious
back and do things
defensive
different,
upside
I
as a
would.
prospect with solid
I'd be
speed, good
much braver
defense, and that
just tell the
elite
truth.
arm strength.
So that we'd
Really
all
nice
feel
package
that
of skills for an
some
outfielder.
semblance of
Snyder
justice was done.
fires across the diamond. Play made. That ends.
I'm a 14-year-old
Swing and a foul
female.
straight back.
This happened during English 2 weeks after the summer holidays ended. We were learning about Charles Dickens when some kids in my class
That's a
pointed at
great
some guy
location
on a
to
bike
tie
in
him up on
Willie's
the
past the
end. That's a
classroom,
good spot.
and he was looking into the room. Our teacher just told us to ignore him and carried on with the lesson. 5 minutes go by, and a girl in my class suddenly screamed and pointed out to the guy who was now next to the window I was sat next to, but he quickly backed off. Our teacher pulled the blinds down and turned the lights
Liner
off and carried
snagged
on
it
with the
first.
lesson.
Dives for the bag.
I had asked to take a time out outside next to the set of stairs that led up to the language rooms. When I sat down next to
and
my
a runner
girlfriend,
at first. The center
I had heard
fielder
a
will
knock
hit
at the
next.
set of double doors on my left. I then hear a male voice
Hit on
who
the
said
ground,
at around
might be
16, asking to be let in,
There's one.
while also trying his
And
luck with
that's
the door
two.
handles. Luckily, they were locked as always. I went back into my classroom, and my teacher informed me that our head teacher had called the police, and they were now on their way. We were starting to pack up for our next period, when we then heard bangings at the windows, and I heard the same voice from the doors, yelling some random words and cussing at us. The bell rang for the next period, and the banging then stopped. Time skipped to when I'm in science in the middle of a practical. When my best friend then pointed out that there were police outside, the chemistry teacher came over to have a look herself. So apparently the guy from before sped off after we made eye contact. I found it a bit creepy as I was on the other side of school, and then now that's where he magically appeared. I later found out from my girlfriend that the guy had been appearing on school grounds for the past 2 weeks, but nobody had mentioned anything about it. He also mentioned that apparently the police noticed he had a weapon on him. To this day, I still feel to think what would have happened if those doors were unlocked. This happened around December of 2019, at 7th period on my last day of the semester. Our school had a basement and led to other classes the kids would try to get into, because they were apparently really easy and had the best air conditioning. We had a test in that class and got done quickly because I found it very easy. I decided to text my friend, who we'll call Cole, to get a pass and meet me in the bathrooms to have vapes. I asked the teacher for a pass and met up with him in the bathroom. Just before we got out our vapes, Cole's phone gets a text message. The message then said that we're on a lockdown.
I don't recognize none of these guys on the scene.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining
Which
us.
is crazy because they're the AAA team.
Pitch black out there.
Next step away from the
starting classroom.
majors.
Always. We then thought that this must be serious. There was a man walking out there. He didn't look like a worker or a janitor. We went into the bathroom, turned off the lights, and then hid in one of the corner stalls. The room was completely silent. We then heard the bathroom open and close. The newest man walking went to the stall that we were in. Cole then said, "Dude, we have to crawl out from the stalls." The room was so silent that even Cole's whisper can be heard from across the room. The guy's breathing stopped, and we heard the stall being pressed in.
That one was served in
a
punch bowl right down the middle, and he regretted
crawled
it
through
as
the
soon as
stalls.
it left his hand.
The man was now full on banging the stall, as well as yelling.
To third base.
The door we noticed were leaving, and the light filled the room. And I saw that the guy was in the hallway. We found him in the door to Cole's class until they opened the door. Cole then explained everything as the teacher locked the door, also mentioning a gun sticking out of his pocket. I didn't see a gun on him, but I just went along with it.
No outs.
Usually middle and high school students would laugh and make me seem like this, but the kids in the corner were quite scared and concerned. There was a bang at the door, and a few of the girls would squeal from fear.
Oh, come on.
Cole, the teacher, and I saw me
I would have had that.
the door and banged out of frustration. He then walked away and down the stairs. We have probably been there for about an hour or two at this point. The teacher instructed us to go outside in a single file, where everyone would be greeted by cops. Cole and I tried to explain the guy's appearance to the cops and the deans. The cops patted us in the back and sent us home. After that incident,
I gotta get
the
a
school
run.
ramped up with security and added cameras. This never got any
I
media
get under that
attention,
enough.
so we don't really know if the guy got caught or not. I'm absolutely convinced that guy's intention was nothing but to kill us.
Getting ready to hit.
When I was in third grade, my history class took a field trip to an old mansion.
Play made. That ends the inning.
I don't even remember exactly why we were there, but it was kind of unsteady, and I think it was like 200 years old. We got inside, and we were given a tour first.
Go
home, go home, go home, go home, go home.
On his way to the plate.
It had 2 floors, a basement and an attic, with about 10 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms.
1 out and
It
2
also had
on.
lots of other
And
rooms,
next, the
like
cleanup
a
hitter.
library, several offices and living rooms, and a large kitchen. There was about
Fly
15
ball,
of
left
us in
field.
class, and after the tour,
Pulls
they
it
let us
down,
look
2
around
gone
on the
now.
main floor.
Just a
They weren't
shade
watching us
too
that
early
closely,
with the
however,
swing.
and I
The
wanted to
mechanics
see the
might have
upstairs
broken
again,
down a bit.
so I just
Needs
walked
to
up
Come on,
by
Ward.
that
myself,
up the middle
looking.
instead of yanking it to the pull side.
Once I got upstairs, I noticed the smell that old buildings
And this
have
one
on
lifted to
towers.
left.
I began looking at the
And that
bedrooms.
retires the side.
I enjoyed history, and the house was actually
So
very
2
interesting.
down. Daniel Snyder now at the plate.
After looking at several bedrooms upstairs, I entered one on
Late
the
on
end.
that fastball. That's an uncharacteristic
to the
chase.
window to
He
see the
usually
view,
lays off
but
pitches
when
off
I
the plate
did,
like
I
that.
heard a noise coming from the closet. I was a little confused.
Hard
and
grounder
looked over
into
at
the
closet.
outfield for a
Another
hit.
base hit.
It was a really old closet, and
Gets
I
on
didn't know
base
it would
and
be
keeps
I'm
it
still in
going.
second,
so
too.
I started to
That
open
one
it,
might as well have
but
been
then I
hit
really got
on
the
a
creeps,
tee,
and I decided
right
to leave
down
the
the
end.
middle, a hitter's dream.
I
The
began to
pitcher's
walk
nightmare.
back out of the
There
hall,
goes the
and
runner.
when I did,
Out to
I heard
short.
footsteps coming from the room. I turned around, and what I saw was a man standing in the
Couldn't
doorway
get
of
the
the
out,
room,
but what a
staring at me.
defensive effort.
Still in
Covered
third.
a
He was
ton of
wearing a
ground
black
and then made a
shirt,
strong
gray
throw to make the
pants,
play a
and
little
just stood
closer.
in the doorway
And
and
now the
gave me a
runner breaks
creepy
for
smile.
third. And he goes down on
I
strikes.
turned and ran as fast as I could down the hall,
And now the
downstairs,
DH,
and back
Yoni
to the booth.
Hernandez.
I don't know who that man was, but I
0-2,
really don't
rocks and
want to know.
fires. On the ground, left side, 6. 1 at second. Double play, and
When
that'll
I
do
was a
it for the
freshman in
inning.
college, I had to take a geology class.
Snyder with a solid
For the
contribution,
class,
even in
we
the
went on a
loss.
field trip for
3
extra
hits in the
credit.
ballgame. Always nice to see a player at this
I'm
level
not the
coming
best
to
at
the plate with a
science,
plan
so I
and
figured I should go on
delivering
the field
strong
trip to
results.
boost my grade
The
a little.
team may have lost, but he held up his end.
We went to a park that I guess had many different kinds of rock formations or something.
So
It was
digging
an
in,
old park,
Yoni
and the professor
Hernandez.
gave us all a little checklist with a worksheet, and after briefing us
0-1,
for a
here's the
few
pitch.
minutes, sent us out to complete the
Bouncer out to
worksheets.
short.
There was about 20 of us in the class, and the park was pretty big,
Fires
so we all
across the
spread out.
diamond. 2 up, 2
I
down.
went with my friend John,
So up
and we
next,
decided to go
Daniel
far out to
Snyder.
fill out the worksheet. We went up a hill and over some rocks and started working. We were actually able to complete
First
it pretty
pitch not
quickly,
close.
as it was a pretty easy assignment. After we were done, we decided to explore a little. We walked for a few minutes and then came upon a large man that was walking down the trail. He approached us and told us that his friend had passed
Lead
out.
runners
and needed
around
our
second.
help.
Here comes the throw.
He said his phone was dead and we needed to follow him
Now
quickly.
he throws on the brakes and returns
Without
safely to
hesitating,
first.
we followed the man.
2 outs and a runner
He
at
started
first.
to run,
And here's
so
the
did
first
we.
baseman.
After about 2 or 3 minutes of jogging, we came upon a
Checks
little
on the
wooded
runner.
area.
Back in easily.
The man stopped and said his friend was behind the tree.
Snyder
We didn't
leads off
see
at
anybody,
first with 2 away.
We looked around for a couple seconds, but then to my surprise, I saw several men
Pitch runner
come out from
breaking for
behind the
second.
trees in all
And he
directions.
hits a ground ball to the right side.
They
Bounces
were
into the
rather
outfield.
ball.
Base
The
hit.
guard was
That
holding
puts
a
runners
stick
at
in
the
his hand.
corners with 2 away.
The original man we were with then told us
2
to
on
give
and
them
2
our
out.
lines and
Scoreless ball game
phones.
here. The catcher
My
will
friend
hit
John
next.
told him no.
And he has struggled this year.
A man then came up to John and pushed him to the ground. I
Out to
tried
short.
talking to them, saying to relax.
They get the force.
They
They're in
then all
plenty of
began to
time.
yell
Ends
at
the
us.
We're back
We
here
were
at the
surrounded.
ballpark. Here's the
Finally,
catcher,
I
number
decided to give
76.
in and took out my wallet and phone and handed it to one of them.
And the 0-1 now.
John did the same.
Up the middle.
They then told us to walk farther into the woods. I knew we had
Fires
to
over
try
to
to run
first.
away.
1 out in the second.
I whispered to John
And
to
the batter
run.
will be
We
the
had a
shortstop.
chance. We were still surrounded, so I pretended to trip over a rock and fall to the
Ground
ground.
ball to short.
When I
Snyder
did, I acted as if I hurt my leg really bad.
zips it to first.
They
2
yelled
up,
at me to
2
get
down.
up, but I said I couldn't, and they started to walk closer to look at me. At that point, the attention was taken off John, and he turned and ran. And I got up and ran between 2 of the men.
First pitch doesn't find the
It was
zone.
pretty close,
That 2
but
out
I was
single
able to
may
escape.
prove critical,
They all began
especially
running
now that
after
the
us
3,
then.
4, 5
We
hitters
ran as
may
fast
have a
as we
chance to
could.
do some damage.
We ran, and we could hear the men behind us the entire time.
In the air, along the left
Finally,
field
we
line.
approached the hill we were
Swallows it up.
originally.
That's out number 3. 1
We
runner
then
left.
started yelling, and the men had
1
stopped
gone, runner
chasing.
at first. The second baseman.
We got
next
back to
hit.
the group, but the men still had our phones and wallets.
On the ground, 2
After
ball.
reporting the incident, They were able to
Snyder,
actually
the
track my
second,
life
on to first,
to an
double
old
play,
house,
and
and
that's
2
the
of the
inning.
men were caught. It was the scariest field trip memory of my life.
Here we go. That one hammered but pulled foul.
A few years ago, I took my grandma and her friend on
That one
holiday
is
in Egypt.
absolutely
There
pummeled.
was some really cheap packages
And
for this
off the
resort
base
town
of the
called
wall.
Sharm el-Sheikh,
Headed for the
and they'd
plate.
both been
The
really
relay.
poorly due to the cold weather over the winter.
That's
So I
ridiculous.
decided to do a good deed and pay for us all to get some sun.
And now, the first baseman, number
Anyway,
28.
I booked the
2
flights for
outs, 2
February
runners
the
in
9th,
scoring
and
position.
we flew out from Heathrow in the morning. The heat was just what they needed,
Gets him
and it
swinging.
was great getting to spend some quality time with them both. But after a couple of days, I started to
Back
get a
here at
touch
the
of cabin
ballpark, on
fever.
to the top half of inning
Like
number
I said,
6.
my
And now
gran
the
and her
first
pal were
baseman,
content to
Owen
spend the
Dillon.
whole time by the pool, gabbing away and
Swing,
drinking
ground ball
alcoholic
out to short.
cocktails. Whereas me, on the other hand, I
Zips
wanted
it
to actually
across.
see a bit of the
One
country.
gone now in the top of the
Came
6th.
so far to visit.
Ready to go for the
I wanted
last
to
half of
soak
the
up a
inning.
bit of the
Stepping in,
culture,
the switch
try
hitting
some real
shortstop,
authentic
Daniel
food instead
Snyder.
of the all-too-familiar European-style grub they served at the resort. I
Sharp
also
grounder,
wanted to
that's
mix
through
with the
for a base
locals.
knock.
As the calendar drew closer to
Runner aboard on
Valentine's
the
Day,
leadoff single.
I found myself longing for a different kind of company.
Aggressive approach paid off.
Now's the
Found
time where
something he
I have to
hit.
clear
Pitcher
something
brought
up.
the challenge
I'm a
pitch,
gay
paid
man.
right down
I
the
was still
pipe.
in my
He was
30s at the
definitely
time, and
geared up for
I
it.
was
With
also
good
very
speed
much
on first,
available.
they have some
I'm
options.
also not one for the holiday
Runner breaks early
romances
for
or
second
one-night
and a step
stands, so
off.
at
Back to
first,
first, and
I
he's
didn't even
safe.
think about dipping my toe with local dating. But as I said, around Valentine's Day, I found myself playing the hopeless romantic and wondering if there was anyone I could share my romance with at such a special time of year.
Here's the
It
pitch.
sounds
Runner
sappy,
going
I
again.
know, but
And there's a
prone to a bit of
base hit into
sadness, so
left.
you'll
Keeper
forgive
hits
me.
second and heads for third.
Anyway, since
Save.
Egypt isn't exactly known for its acceptance
Great
of gay or
job to
lesbian
come through in a
lifestyles,
high
I
leverage
didn't reckon that there'd be
situation.
any bars
Sets
that I
up
could
a
pop
pivotal
into
at bat
for a
with
bit
a
of
chance for
harmless
them
flirting.
to take the lead.
So instead, I decided to see who in the area was on Tinder. I brought up the app, changed my location, and did a bit of
Right
swiping
side,
here and there throughout the
settles
day.
under it.
There were a few tourists, and only a handful of
Pulls that
locals were
one
brave
in.
enough to actually show their faces, but one did, and oh my days was he gorgeous.
Next
He
to
was
hit,
tall,
Nick Ward.
dark, and handsome, every queen's dream, and his bio said that he worked as a resort manager. His English seemed really good from his profile,
Hit on
so
the
I
ground,
thought that
might be
I'd
two.
swipe right and
Quick
see
speed
what
to
came of
second
it.
for one. And
I
that's
really
two.
didn't think that we'd match. He seemed way out of my league, so I
And
just
now,
sort of
the
resigned
catcher,
myself
number
to
76.
it not happening and started planning a little trip into the old town so I could check out some of the
Grounds
old
this
boss
one up the
stuff.
middle.
I jump a resort shuttle into the old town, have a little
Tosses to
wander around the
first.
market and all
Inning
that,
over,
and
but the
I'm
damage
taking
certain.
pictures of all sorts of amazing
Runner at
things as I
second,
go.
one away.
Then,
Snyder
on
digs
the way
it
back
now.
towards the shuttle shop, I walked past somewhere with free Wi-Fi, and since I had all my data off to save a few quid on the phone bill, I took the opportunity to log on to the Wi-Fi so I could send Grant a few photos as if to say, look what you're missing out on. Then right as I'm trying to send the photo, a Tinder match comes through, and it's the Egyptian Adonis that I had mentioned before.
Yes,
I couldn't believe it. I was just staring at the match
Huh?
in disbelief, thinking, this must be my lucky day.
Hey, right.
Then as I'm looking at the screen, he starts typing, hello.
Oh, yeah.
0-2,
This
and
was
the
it.
delivery.
We talked for
Out
about
to
half
center.
an hour back and forth as I walked up and down the
Gets
street,
there
just
under it.
to myself. When I told him that I was only there for a few more days, he asked if I wanted to meet that night.
Ghost, you don't want them to.
If I give him a few hours to get home from work and take a shower, I could be around by 7 p.m. for dinner and a movie. He asked if I like pasta. And oh my God, do I like pasta. And then when I said yes, he said that he'd make me some fresh and homemade. I was ready to fall in love right there. And after telling him that I'd give him a text in a few hours, I headed back to the resort. Gran knew something was up. She could tell by how much that I was smiling when I got back. She was a bit slower to accept me coming out than my parents were, but she got there in the end. And by that time, she was very supportive. So when she recognized a bit of glow about me, she had no qualms about asking me 101 questions while she and her friend giggled back and forth like schoolgirls. I told her that I'd be having dinner with a friend and that if all went well, that I'd be back in the morning.
When they'd finished giggling, Gran and her friend got awful sweet about the whole thing, wished me luck, and told me to have a lovely time. The man I'd been texting, just call him Mal, had given me the address of his flat near the old town. He said he couldn't offer me any wine, but that the pasta sauce was on the stove, and he was very excited to see me. I was excited to see him, too. Really excited, actually. Too excited to consider if maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all. But I didn't think. Or if I did, it was only from my little naive bubble where I couldn't possibly consider the outcome of such a thing. I wanted to meet Mal so much that it didn't even occur to me that he didn't exist in the first place. Things only started to seem off when I was actually walking up to his flat, when I saw what a state of disrepair the building was in. It wasn't exactly a wreck or anything, but all of Mal's pictures had made him look quite well off. That block of flats didn't seem like the kind of place a person like that would call home, but just the thought made me feel like I was being way too judgmental. The one moment of doubt I had, the one opportunity I really had to walk away and save myself, I just brushed off the idea like it was nothing. I followed my heart when I should have trusted my gut, and I ended up paying dearly for it. I found the apartment matching the number he'd given me and knocked on the door. There was a complete silence on the other side. Maybe it's a bit too hopeful of me to expect the sounds of smooth jazz and cooking when I arrive at the home of a potential date. A complete silence. Hearing nothing gave me the creeps immediately. Then, when someone answered the door, it was a total stranger. Not Mal, not even anyone who looked like him. It was just this chubby, bearded bloke who somehow knew my name. It was so confusing that I didn't even know what to say at first. I was scared that I'd been catfished or something. But then, the guy addresses me by name, then invites me inside, saying he's a friend of Mal's and that he'll be back in a few minutes.
And now at the plate,
I'm still very hesitant to walk into his flat, and I'm still thinking something was really off here, but then the guy suddenly said something that put my mind at ease. His English was good, but heavily accented, and he said something like, "Don't worry, I know you and Mal have a meeting together. I'll be leaving when he comes back, I promise."
And he was a 10th round
He
pick.
sounded as warm and welcoming as possible, and like I said, I actually found it quite reassuring at first. But the thing is, I might be an idiot, but I'm not a total idiot. So instead of going inside, I decided to politely decline. I told the guy that it'd be more comfortable waiting outside and that I'd give him all a call or something to see where he was. I thanked the guy, gave him a wave, and turned to walk him down the stairs. But I knew it was too late. The look the guy gave me when I turned him down was chilling. He went from happy and smiling to completely expressionless in a microsecond. And part of me knew right then that things had to go horribly wrong. As I got about halfway down the stairs, I heard shouting from above me. It was a man's voice, and he sounded very angry. I thought it was the man that I'd been talking to, who was now fuming that his catfish had been rumbled, and out of fear that he'd started chasing me down the stairs on Patrick Bateman. I started basically running down the stairs to get out of there faster. I hadn't even got to the bottom yet when I realized that, yes, the man was actually giving chase. But when I got up to the street outside, there were 2 police officers standing right in front of me.
Good
Like an
pick.
angel that suddenly materialized right when I needed them most. I started to explain what was happening in the plainest, simplest English possible, hoping they'd be able to understand, but as I spoke, I suddenly realized that they were not there to help me. They were both giving me these absolute death stares, and I remember shouting, "Wait, wait, wait," as one of them pulled out this big wooden baton. After that, my memory gets a bit patchy. I know they took me back up into the flat that I just walked away from. But honestly, I couldn't tell you if I walked or if they carried me. The next solid memory I have was being punched and kicked while the man who answered the door asked me questions in English. I remember trying to answer them as best as I could at first, but I could taste blood in my mouth, and anything I tried to say just came out as a kind of groan. I spit out the blood so I could speak, but that just made them beat me harder. Then the questions turned to my sexuality and the reasons I had traveled into the old town that evening. In that moment, It wasn't quite like their whole scheme came together before my eyes,
Outside the zone
but it
on 0-2.
definitely was a big clue for me.
That one missed. That
The invite
curveball was
from Ball
way
had
high. He
obviously been
clearly
some
didn't
kind of
release
trick.
it properly.
And although I was sadly familiar with the concept of gay bashing
Bites
back
that
in
one
the
off,
UK,
we'll reset and do it
the fact
again.
that the police were involved in whatever was going on was absolutely terrifying to
2-2.
me. It's a testament to how scared I
Lance
was
Powell,
that
we'll
when
reset
they actually
and
put
do
some
it again.
handcuffs on me and dragged me out to a waiting police car, I was actually relieved. I thought that that'd be the end of the beatings and
And
abuse,
there's a hit.
and the beginnings
And
of
the
some
leadoff
kind
hitter
of
aboard.
official legal process, but it was only half right.
And he's
They took any
clearly
opportunity
locked
they
in
could
after
to
yet
punch me,
another
kick
hit.
me,
Really
or throw
seeing
me
the
into a
ball
wall.
lately. He's
And when
a
I
threat
asked what I was being
every
charged
time he
with,
steps into the
they told me
box.
simply, debauchery. I didn't even know what debauchery even was at the time, let alone
And
that there was
next,
a
the
law
cleanup
against it
hitter.
in Egypt.
0 for 1, struck out swinging last
The fact
night.
I was completely in the dark about the whole thing meant my nerves were stretched to a breaking point for almost every minute that I was in that cell. I only really got an idea of what was going on when a man from the British Foreign Office turned up to have a chat with me. I never thought that I'd be so happy to see another English person, and at first, just being spoken to like a bloody human being was such a relief that I had to fight back tears for a while. His name was Martin, and as much as first meeting him was a real boost, the news he had for me wasn't good. Basically, Egypt had made it illegal to be intimate with someone outside of marriage. They call this law Article 9 or something. Officially, its purpose is to combat what they call adultery, but unofficially, it's the law that makes being gay a crime in the country. And if you're charged with an Article 9 related crime, a conviction can mean anything from 6 months to 3 years in prison. Just hearing the words 3 years in prison made me feel physically sick, and I think I was just about on the verge of a panic attack before Martin managed to calm me down. He told me not to worry, and that the Foreign Office was leveraging the Egyptian government on my behalf. However, they needed something from me, too. They needed me to remain almost completely silent. I was to say nothing about my sexuality, and if they asked me any other questions, my only answers were to be, I don't recall, or my intentions were kind of platonic.
It's a pitch
I
out.
was to repeat these two phrases until I was blue in the
And they
face.
tag the runner for
And
the
if they
out.
kept stuck, the police would eventually have no choice but to drop the charges.
Catcher.
Martin talked like it was something he'd been through 100 times, and that reassured me that everything would be okay. But also kept saying over and
Whips
over
it
again
across.
before he left,
One up,
don't
one
say a
down.
bloody thing.
Yoni
All of
Hernandez
this
getting
hinges
ready
on
to
your
hit.
silence. And he was right. But my God, did the Egyptian police use
Bounce
dirty
to the left
tricks to
side.
try and get a confession out of me. During the final period of questioning before they let me go, they told me things like, if you tell us you're gay and admit what you tried to do, we'll let you go. They tried acting so genuine, and it was sickening seeing how nice they could act, when all they wanted to do was put me in prison and slap me with a steep fine. I just did what Martin had asked me, and in the end, they let me go.
And now you have to
I'd rather
shorten
not
up
rehash
and
the
just
reunion
find
with
a way
my
to put it
man.
in play.
Let's just
You're
say
gonna
it
have to
was
fight one or
very
two off.
emotional, with a lot of tears and a lot of apologies. I spoke to Martin briefly on the phone before we were due
Fights
to
that
fly
one way,
home,
still
and
1
he
and 2.
assured me that no further
He's doing
charges
a
would be
good job
filed.
of changing speeds.
I thanked him
First
for
the
helping me,
off-speed stuff,
and he assured
then
me
the
that he
heat.
was only doing his
Now
job,
the hitter's off
no
balance.
different from all the other
Swing and a
suits and
drive.
ties that keep the wheels of government turning.
That one hops the wall.
But to me,
Makes the turn and digs
it
for
was so much
second
more than
base.
that.
It's a double, 3-hit ball game.
The man who appeared so calm and
No
collected
fear
while I
with
was at my
2
breaking
strikes.
point.
Really good
He
approach
was
at
my
the
hero.
pitch. That one was served
Even
in
if he
a
was the
punch
most
bowl
unassuming
right down
hero
the middle, and he
you could dream
regretted
of.
it as soon as it left his hand. Uh-oh, runner broke early for third, and he's out on the tag.
What I'm about to tell you happened last year on
The
Valentine's
tying
Day.
run aboard at first.
I'm a
Here in the
female
top
who
half
lives
of
by
the
myself in a small house about 10 minutes outside of a major city.
Swing and a bouncer.
I've lived in this house for about 3 years now, after moving from an apartment in another city.
And they turn to
I had been single for a while, and I hadn't really been dating at the
digging
time.
in the switch
I was
hitting
mainly just
outfielder.
focusing on work, which was really busy at this time of the year. Then one morning, it happened to be Valentine's Day, and I got up at about 6 a.m. like I usually did.
There with plenty of time.
When I stepped out my front door, I noticed that there was a letter on my front step with a rose on top of it.
3 for 3 with
I
2
picked it up and
singles
saw
and
that
a
it had
double.
my name on it, but no return address. It was strange because at this early in the morning, I knew that somebody had to physically bring the letter and rose to my front step, and not just mail it. I took them both inside. I was really curious to find out who this was from.
Smoked on the ground a second.
When I opened up the letter,
Plenty of time
it went from happy to creeped out. The letter was typed out. It started out by complimenting me on my looks, and also saying I was really nice. Then it went on to describe some of my daily activities, and eventually whoever wrote it said that we were meant to be together. However, they never left their name, and there was no indication at all who it was from. I took a photo of it and sent it to a texting group chat that I had with several of my friends, asking if one of them did it as a joke. I really didn't think they would use something like that. And sure enough, they all denied it, but they did think it was pretty funny. I thought about all the people that it could have been, but I didn't really have any good ideas as to who it was. I decided to just move on and forget all about it. That night,
Let's go. Good throw.
I once again saw something on my front step. There was a heart-shaped piece of paper, and it said on it, "Why don't you spend Valentine's Day with me?" I took it and went inside and called my best friend to tell her about it. We talked for a while, and it made me feel better. But a little while later, after hanging up, as I was in my living room, I heard a knock coming from my front door. It was nighttime by now, so it immediately got me suspicious. I went over to the front door, but nobody was there.
A great play.
I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye a man walking down the sidewalk in the other direction. Of course, I only saw him for a second, so I couldn't really give a description of him at all.
Factor in getting that win.
I opened the door, and there were no new letters or anything like that on the front step. I was now pretty concerned about whoever this was, but I didn't really know if it was grounds to call the police or anything like that. I hadn't been threatened or anything, so it seemed like it could have all just been a joke, and I didn't want to overreact. But still, I couldn't help but feel nervous about who it had been. I called my best friend back, and she offered to come over and stay the night with me, which I said yes to. She didn't live too far away. I was there within 15 minutes. There was no more activity the rest of the night, and the next day everything seemed fine. I went back to work like usual. When I got home, I was happy to see that there were no letters or anything like that. I figured whatever had happened was just some Valentine's Day prank. I still wondered who it was, though, but I was no longer really that concerned. But about 2 days later, as I got home from work, I once again saw a letter at my front doorstep. I got a bad feeling when I saw it. When I got inside, I opened up the letter. Inside the envelope, there was another handwritten note. It said, quote, "I've been watching you. I hope you enjoyed my Valentine's Day card the other day. I also knocked on your door several times. And tomorrow when you get back from work, I will be back." I couldn't believe it when I read this. I suddenly felt really freaked out, like I wasn't alone. I ran straight from my front door and out to my car. When I was safely in my car, I drove to the nearest police station. I told everything to them, and they ended up investigating and having an officer staying in my house for a couple of days. I don't think they ever found out who was behind it all, but I never had anything like that happen again.
2 outs. And here's the catcher. Cut on and miss. That's a strikeout.
A few years back, I went on a date with my girlfriend on Valentine's Day.
You're back here at the ballpark.
We went out to a really nice and fancy restaurant. The restaurant was one of those that was pretty expensive and you needed to make reservations for. You also had to wear nice clothes. We didn't normally go to such nice restaurants, but on the special occasion of Valentine's Day it was nice. The plan was for after dinner to go to a movie. When we were leaving the restaurant and going out to my car in the parking lot, I saw there was a van standing kind of next to my car. I was parked kind of in the back of the parking lot, so I was sort of surprised to see this. The man was wearing a suit and saw me walking towards him, but didn't say anything. I guess maybe he was waiting for something like that. He was probably about 6 feet away from the passenger side of my car. When I got close to him, I said hi. The man didn't say hi back to me, though. He just kind of looked away and sort of took a few steps farther. We got in and drove away to a movie theater that was about 10 minutes away. The movie theater was pretty busy, and after we had gotten our seats, I left to go to the bathroom. As I was walking down the hall of the movie theater, I saw this same man in a suit once again, kind of standing near the bathroom, looking in another direction. He never looked at me at all, and as I got closer, I was sure it was him. I went to the bathroom, and then walked back to the theater where my girlfriend was, and I told her about seeing the man.
Steps on the bag.
She thought that I was joking at first and started laughing, until I told her that I was serious.
This one for sure.
We didn't really know what to make of it, but just hoped that it was a strange coincidence. For the most part, we ended up forgetting about it. When the movie was over, we left the theater, and we didn't see the man at all in the theater or the parking lot. We got back to my apartment to watch some TV and have some drinks. I would say about an hour after getting back, as I was changing channels on the TV, my girlfriend asked me to come and look out the window. I walked over to it and looked outside down below. I lived on the third floor, so it was sort of high up, but not really way up there. I saw on the side of the road was the same man in a suit just standing there. Now I knew this couldn't be a coincidence. This time it appeared he was on the phone. I knew without a doubt that this was the same guy. We were both really creeped out now. I had enough at this point and decided to go downstairs and confront the man. I left the apartment and walked downstairs to the lobby. Then I went out the door to the street where the man was. But when I got there, he was gone. I walked down the street a little bit and looked all around. I couldn't find him, so I went back up to the apartment and asked my girlfriend if she saw which way the man went. She said that he walked closer to the apartment building, and then he went out of sight. This was concerning because to us there was a strong possibility that the man was inside of our apartment building. It took me a long time to fall asleep that night, but nothing strange happened until I finally did fall asleep. I had dozed off at probably about 2 a.m., but was awoken to the sound of a knock on our apartment door. I quietly got up and walked over to it. I looked out the peephole, but saw no one. My girlfriend and I both knew it had to be the man in the suit, but what did he want? Out to shore. The rest of the night there were no more knocks. In fact, we never did see that man again. But I always wondered who he was, why we kept seeing him.
Ground ball up the middle, through for a base hit.
This happened last year, a few days before Valentine's Day. I was 18 years old at the time. I was a very shy kid. It seemed that every girl I saw ignored me or just didn't really want to talk to me. Anyway, I was at a restaurant with my best friend at the time, who I called John. We were talking about a bunch of different things, but mainly sports. Eventually, I asked him about some dating advice. I knew I could ask him about this sort of thing because at the time he had a girlfriend. I told John I was sick and tired of being ignored by every girl, and John told me to take out my phone. He took his out as well and told me about the dating site he used to meet his girlfriend. John helped me by explaining how to make a good profile and things like that. A few hours later, I was at my house in my room setting up the profile. I tried to find the nicest picture of myself that I could. When I did, I used it for my profile. Then I used the app for a while, hoped to get some matches. I decided to watch some TV in my room after that, sitting on my bed, waiting for my phone to go off, saying I'd matched with someone. I was skeptical and didn't really think it would work. But after about just a minute, there was a ding from my phone. I grabbed my phone to look and see what it was. I saw the message was from the dating website, and it said someone had matched with me. When I clicked on it, I saw I had matched with a girl named Eva. I clicked on her profile and saw that there was a picture of Eva. She was my same age and had black hair and bright blue eyes. She was also wearing a blue dress, and she was smiling, showing off her bright white teeth. I felt myself smile. This was the first girl who I was about to talk to, so I decided to send her a simple hello to start the chat between us. A minute later, Eva sent a hello back. We ended up chatting. She seemed really nice. I then asked Eva if I could meet her in real life and not just chat with her, and she actually said yes. She told me I could meet her at her house, and then she gave me her house address. She told me I could come over that very same night if I wanted to. I said yeah and gave her a thumbs up. I stopped chatting with Eva and started getting ready. It was a bit cold outside that night, so I put some warm clothes on. I then grabbed my phone from my bed and hopped into my car. I messaged Eva telling her I was on my way over. As I was driving down the road, I kept thinking about how lucky I was. I was going to meet a girl on the first night of using the dating app, and I was excited about what John was going to say when I told him about it. As I continued driving to Eva's house, I suddenly realized that the road I was driving on was becoming more and more empty and just woods. I passed by houses every several minutes, but there were barely any streetlights,
Swing and a
and it
miss.
seemed
Nice
that I was
changeup.
heading into the
That's some
middle of
great
nowhere.
arm action from him
In
to sell the
fact, it
changeup.
took me almost an hour to get to her house. When I got there, I texted Eva telling her I was there and got out of my car. When I looked up at the house I was standing in front of, it looked like it would cave in at any second. I had a bad feeling, but I decided to keep going up to the front door. As I did, I noticed the grass that was in the front lawn was knee-high. I sent Eva another message. Told her I was in front of the house. Told her to tell me if this was the right address.
Good job to fight that one off.
She sent a message saying yes, she was there, and to just go inside and call out her name. I grabbed the doorknob and let it slowly creak open, walking inside the house. I noted that it was dark and dusty inside. I didn't see Eva or anyone else. Then I tried to send Eva another message, but the app wouldn't work. The Wi-Fi signal was down, and I wasn't really getting any service on my phone. I decided to walk around and see if I could find her, so I headed into the living room. I saw a bunch of old furniture, and then I noticed hanging from the ceiling was a bright blue dress. I noticed it was the same one that Eva had been wearing in a couple of the photos she had on her profile. Then I saw a black wig hanging from the dress. It made me really confused, because Eva's hair was black in the pictures. I called out Eva, hoping she would hear my voice. But just then, in the deepest and creepiest tone, I heard a yes from behind me. I nearly jumped and hit the ceiling. I turned around, but I didn't see Eva. The only person standing in front of me wasn't a girl. It was a guy wearing a black hoodie. He had the hood up and was wearing blue jeans. I noticed he had brown hair, and he gave me a creepy smile and winked. I asked who he was, but he didn't say anything. He just pointed at the blue dress and the wig, grinning at me with the darkest smile that a human could. Then I noticed he had something in his hand. It appeared to be a gun. He told me in a deep voice to hand over everything I had on me. Then he pulled out a bag. I didn't want to argue with him, so I pulled everything out of my pockets and dropped them into his bag, even the watch I was wearing. The man then started to walk away from me. Pretty soon, I watched him walk out the front door. I was relieved, but also still terrified. Finally, I was able to get my legs to move again, and I ran out to my car as fast as I could. Luckily, I didn't see that freak again, but he had all of my stuff. I drove all the way back to John's house and told him everything. From there, he called the police, and when they arrived, I told them everything. As it turns out, the man who lured me into the house was also pretending to be the Eva girl, and she didn't really exist. That's why I saw the blue dress and the wig in the living room of the house. The house also didn't belong to the man, and it was an old abandoned one. The scary thing is, the police never found the guy. But since it happened, I stopped using dating apps.
The final line score for our ball game for the victorious side.
Dusted and repulsed, don't even begin to describe what I felt toward my ex-roommate. She was really something else. Moving into the dorms your freshman year of college is supposed to be one of those fun experiences in life. Something you look forward to all summer. Well, I look forward to it at least. Moving day went well. I was a little disappointed when they told me that I wouldn't be having a roommate. I always envisioned my roommate becoming my best friend and doing everything together, but I guess that wasn't meant to be. The first half of the school year went great. I made plenty of friends, and I got really used to having the room all to myself. When they told me I'd be getting a roommate in January, I was actually pretty bummed. I cleaned up the other half of the room to accommodate the girl that would be moving in, just hoped that we would get along. She came the second week of January when we had gotten back from winter break. She told me her name was Cassandra, but to just call her Cassie. And Cassie didn't have much. She said it was because her parents never bought her anything. Whatever she had bought herself. I think she had maybe 4 boxes in total. I felt bad for her and told her that she could borrow some of my stuff if she ever needed to, but to ask first so I wouldn't think that I just lost it or something. And I quickly realized Cassie wasn't the average 18-year-old girl. She was different. First, she had horrible hygiene. I had to beg her a few times to take a shower in the nicest way possible because she would smell so bad that I actually would gag when I entered the room. She always thought it was kind of funny. She never washed her clothes, which also meant that the clothes that she would borrow, I never got washed either. She would give me back my shirts with sweat stains and food covering the front. It was like this girl had never been taught any manners or basic social skills ever in her life. But the worst thing about Cassie was her obsession with eating raw meat. And I'm not kidding you. I walked in on her eating cuts of raw bacon one day, and she tried hiding it when I walked in, but there was no way that I could unsee them.
That's a double.
I asked her why she was eating raw bacon. Not to shame her or anything, but I just was genuinely morbidly curious. Really grossed out, obviously. Still curious. She said it was something that she'd always done growing up, and that her parents ate raw meat too, and that it was just a normal thing for her. I honestly thought it was completely disgusting, but I also was trying to be a good roommate and as nice as I could, so I told her as long as I didn't have to witness her eating it in front of me, I was cool with her keeping her raw meat in the mini fridge.
Next to hit, the
I
third
should never have said
baseman, number
that.
14.
The next day I opened the mini fridge to find it full of pounds of meat. All different kinds too.
Grounder might be
Bacon,
two.
ground beef, different cuts of
The
steak,
second, there's one.
meat.
They get the out, but the
When
run
Cassie walked
scores
in
on
and
the
saw me
twin
staring
killer.
into the fridge, she looked at me. She was smiling ear to ear,
Getting
so
ready to
proud
hit.
of her meat stash. She bragged about the deals that she found, and before I could stop her, she reached in front of me, grabbed a
Swing
package of
lifts it
ground
to
beef,
shallow left
opened it
field.
up,
Base hit
and started
and a run
shoving it
to
into her
score.
mouth. I almost threw up right then. I was yelling at her to stop, and
Snyder
with meat
will
still in
hit
her
next.
mouth, she just laughed. I reacted in horror when I felt bits of it land near me, and that only made her laugh harder. The next day I requested a room change. I
And that
couldn't
one
take
fouled
it,
off.
but I was told that
The
that would only
strikers
be possible in
big
the
in
next
this
2
game.
weeks.
You're in the bottom
I
half
was
of
fine
the
with
eighth.
that as long as it meant that I could escape the nightmare that was this disgusting person known as Cassie.
That one
She
fouled
really
off.
freaked me out. I told her she wasn't allowed to borrow my stuff anymore since she never returned anything in a good enough state for me to use anyways. She was upset, but seemed to understand. We didn't talk much the week
Runner at
after I
second with
requested
two
a room
down.
change.
Gets it
She
by him for
continued
the
to stash
strikeout.
all her meat in the fridge,
They
but
pick up
at
a
least she wasn't eating it in front of me anymore.
He's definitely
A
capable
couple of
of
days
more
before I
than
was due
this.
to move out of the
They got
room,
the
I
win,
was
but I'm
sitting
sure
at
he'll
my
be
desk
hungry
next
to
to
come
Cassie
out
when
and
she
do
walked out
better
of the
in the
room.
next game.
I got a call from one of my friends and leaned back as we talked. I was looking around the room when my eyes settled on her computer. One of the tabs had 3 words that read, "Wanted, fresh meat." I laughed and told my friend what I saw. He told me to click on it and see what it was because he was curious. And I never in my wildest dreams would have expected to see what was on there. When I clicked on the tab, my laughing quickly halted. My friend was asking me over and over what it was, but I was too scared to even speak. It was an ad that she had posted on a website I had never even heard of. And the fresh meat that she was looking for wasn't from a cow or a pig or a goat. She had posted a wanted ad for fresh, human meat. In the ad, she carefully explained how she liked eating raw meat and had always dreamed about what a human meat would taste like. She seemed to be obsessed with it. One line completely caught me off guard and made me want to join the witness protection program immediately, and in it she said, "Eating human flesh has consumed my every thought. Sometimes I watch my roommate sleeping and fantasize about chewing on her." I took a picture of the ad on my phone and clicked off of it so she wouldn't notice I was on her computer. I grabbed my
All right,
bag
thanks
and
for
headed out.
watching, guys.